When a mysterious woman appears during a storm and makes an offer for a struggling father's old car, it launches a journey that will test a family already facing impossible odds. As father and daughter navigate a world of ancient mysteries and modern greed, they discover their greatest strength lies in their unbreakable bond. While nature's fury rages and powerful enemies close in, they realize that no treasure compares to the connection forged through years of sacrifice and love. Their extraordinary adventure proves that the most valuable possession is the courage to face any storm together. A brief pause before we begin. Write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from. To subscribe to our channel, it's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. Jack Foster collapsed onto his worn-out couch and closed his eyes. The silence of the apartment, broken only by the ticking of the old wall clock and the sound of rain outside the window, felt like a blessing after a 16-hour workday. 3 jobs in a row wore him down to the limit, but there was no other way. Bills wouldn't pay themselves, and his 12-year-old daughter Emily deserved a better life than what he could give her, working as a warehouse loader by day, a supermarket cashier in the evening, and a night security guard in the industrial zone. The clock showed 11:18 p.m. In 6 hours, he would need to get up again to take Emily to the Math Olympiad. This competition was her chance. The winner would receive a scholarship to a prestigious private school, a dream that Jack could never fulfill on his modest income. He glanced at the keys to his old Ford Focus lying on the coffee table. The car barely ran, the engine knocked, the transmission crunched with every shift, and the heater didn't work at all. But there was no choice. Buses in their area ran sporadically, especially in rainy weather, and a taxi would be too expensive. Outside, the rain intensified, turning into a real downpour. The thunderclaps made Jack flinch. He had hated storms ever since Lisa left him 3 years ago on just such a stormy night, leaving him alone with their 7-year-old daughter and $30,000 in debt. "I'm not made for this, Jack," she had said then, closing the door behind her forever. Suddenly, there was a knock. Jack opened his eyes abruptly and looked at the door. Maybe he was imagining it. Who would be going door to door in such weather and at such an hour? The knock repeated, insistent, confident. Rising from the couch, Jack approached the door. Their neighborhood wasn't known for safety, so he was always careful with uninvited guests. "Who is it?" he asked. "Sorry to bother you," came a woman's voice with a slight accent that Jack couldn't place. "My car broke down not far from here. Could I use your phone?" Jack hesitated, but then opened the door. Standing on the threshold was a woman about 30, soaked through. Her dark hair clung to her face, and her elegant coat was ruined by rain and dirt. "Come in," Jack stepped aside. "You're completely drenched." "Thank you." The woman entered the apartment, leaving wet footprints on the floor. "My name is Alexa. I wouldn't bother you so late, but my phone died and my car stalled 2 blocks from here." "I'm Jack," he introduced himself, offering a towel he had grabbed from the bathroom. "What happened to your car?" "Not sure," Alexa dabbed her hair with the towel. "It just stopped starting. I was hoping to call a tow truck." "In this weather, they'll take hours to get here," Jack noted, glancing at the clock. "It's almost midnight." At that moment, a sleepy Emily appeared in the bedroom doorway, wearing pajamas decorated with mathematical formulas, a gift from her math teacher who saw real talent in her. "Dad? Who's that?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "This is Alexa. Her car broke down," Jack explained. "Emily, you need to sleep. Tomorrow's an important day." "The Math Olympiad," Emily explained sleepily to the stranger. "I'll be solving algebra and geometry problems." "Really?" Alexa smiled. "I loved math in school too." Jack noticed how Alexa's expression changed when she looked at Emily. Something subtle, like a sudden realization or a decision made in a split second. "Go to sleep, sunshine," Jack said gently. "You need to rest before the Olympiad." When Emily left, Alexa carefully surveyed Jack's modest living room. Her gaze slid over the stack of bills on the table, the photograph of little Emily in a frame, and the old Ford Focus keys. "Is that your car?" she asked, nodding at the keys. "Yes, good old Ford," Jack chuckled. "Almost as old as Emily, but still runs. At least most of the time." Alexa thought for a moment, then pulled a business card from her wet coat pocket and handed it to Jack. "Alexa Rains, Atlantic Exploration," the card read. Below was a phone number and a small logo, a compass overlaid on the silhouette of a sunken ship. "This might sound strange," she said, looking Jack directly in the eyes, "but could you lend me your car for a couple of days?" Jack blinked in surprise. "My Ford? But it's in terrible condition. And how would I take Emily to the Olympiad tomorrow morning?" "I understand I'm asking a lot." Alexa spoke quickly, as if afraid Jack would interrupt her. "But it's really important. I work for a company that searches for sunken ships. We have a chance to find valuable artifacts, but we need access to a hard-to-reach location. And oddly enough, your car with its dimensions and characteristics is perfect for transporting special equipment." "But what about Emily?" Jack repeated. "Her Olympiad is tomorrow at 8:30 a.m., and the buses run irregularly." "I'll call a taxi for you," Alexa said quickly. "I'll pay for both the trip there and back. And in 3 days, I'll return your car in better condition than it is now. I promise." Jack shook his head incredulously. "Why should I believe you? We just met." "I'll pay you," Alexa said firmly. $5,000 for the use of your car for 3 days. $5,000? Jack couldn't believe his ears. This was a sum he would earn in 3 months of continuous work. "For this wreck? I'm absolutely serious." Alexa opened her handbag and took out an envelope. "Here's $1,000 as a down payment. You'll get the rest when I return the car." Jack hesitated. The offer sounded too good to be true. A stranger appearing on his doorstep late at night during a storm, offering $5,000 for his old car? There had to be a catch, but $5,000 could change their lives. Pay off debts, buy new clothes for school, maybe even make a down payment on their own place instead of this cramped rental apartment. "What if the Olympiad runs long? Or if we need to go somewhere urgently?" asked Jack, still doubtful. "I'll give you my personal phone number." Alexa wrote something on the back of her business card. "Call anytime and I'll arrange transportation. Taxi, Uber, whatever you need. On my account." Thunder rumbled particularly loudly, making both of them jump. The rain drummed on the roof, as if counting down the seconds for making a decision. "I don't know." Jack looked at the keys to his Ford. Giving his only means of transportation to a stranger on just her word seemed crazy. But something in Alexa's eyes, some sincere urgency, made him believe her. 3 days, Alexa repeated. "Just 3 days and your life could change. Isn't that what you want for Emily?" At the mention of his daughter, Jack felt his resolve strengthen. For Emily, he was willing to take the risk. "Okay," he finally said, reaching for the envelope. "But I want you to call and order a taxi for tomorrow. Right now." "Of course," Alexa smiled, taking out her phone. "And don't worry, Jack. In 3 days, you'll get your car back. Maybe even in better condition than it is now." Jack barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Alexa's face, heard her promises, and wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life by trusting a complete stranger. When his alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., he was already awake, staring at the ceiling. The storm had passed, leaving behind puddles that gleamed in the early morning light. Jack rose quietly, trying not to wake Emily. He had just enough time to prepare breakfast and review some math problems with her before the taxi arrived. In the kitchen, he opened the envelope Alexa had given him. Inside were 10 crisp $100 bills. The sight of so much cash at once made his head spin. With shaking hands, he hid the money in the jar of coffee beans in the upper cabinet, the one place he was certain no one would look. "Dad," Emily's voice startled him. She stood in the doorway, already dressed in her best outfit, a blue skirt and white blouse they had bought at a thrift store, but looked almost new. "Are you okay?" "Of course, sunshine," Jack forced a smile. "Just a bit nervous about your big day." "Where's the car?" Emily peered out the window. "I don't see it in the parking spot." Jack had prepared for this question. "It's in the shop. I finally had enough to get it fixed." The lie tasted bitter, but he couldn't tell his daughter he had lent their only transportation to a stranger for money. "A taxi will take us to the Olympiad." Emily's eyes widened. "A real taxi? Cool." Jack felt a pang of guilt at seeing how excited she was about something most kids would take for granted. He promised himself that when Alexa returned with the rest of the money, he would use some of it to give Emily a proper day out. Maybe even a trip to the amusement park she had been talking about for years. At precisely 7:45 a.m., the taxi arrived. Jack was surprised to see it was not a regular yellow cab, but a sleek black Lincoln Town car with tinted windows. "Mr. Foster?" The driver, dressed in a sharp suit, opened the back door for them. "Many Ms. Rains arranged for your transportation today." Emily looked at her father with confusion. "Who's Ms. Rains?" Business associate," Jack replied awkwardly. "Come on, we don't want to be late." The drive to Jefferson High School, where the Olympiad was being held, took just 15 minutes. In normal circumstances, it would have taken them nearly an hour by bus. Emily spent the entire ride with her nose pressed against the window, watching the upscale neighborhoods they usually never visited. When they arrived, Jack was struck by the imposing brick building with its manicured lawns and flagpoles. Students in pressed uniforms streamed through the entrance, many accompanied by parents in business attire. Jack suddenly felt self-conscious in his worn jeans and faded flannel shirt. "You're going to do great," he told Emily, adjusting her collar. "Just remember what we practiced." "What if I don't win?" Emily's earlier confidence seemed to waver as she watched the other contestants, many from private schools with advanced math programs. "Then we'll celebrate how far you've come," Jack assured her. "I'm proud of you no matter what." Emily hugged him tightly, then squared her shoulders and marched toward the registration desk with determination that reminded Jack so much of himself at her age, before life had worn him down with its endless struggles. After watching Emily disappear into the examination hall, Jack checked his phone. A text had arrived from an unknown number. "Car safely received. All going according to plan. We'll contact you tomorrow with update." Jack stared at the message for a long moment. There was no turning back now. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Jack paced the school hallways, too nervous to sit still in the waiting area with the other parents. The Olympiad consisted of 3 rounds: a written exam in the morning, a team problem-solving session in the early afternoon, and final individual challenges for the top performers. By 3 p.m., Jack was running on coffee and anxiety. When Emily finally emerged from the exam room, her face was unreadable. "How did it go?" he asked, dreading the answer. A slow smile spread across her face. "I made it to the finals, Dad. Only 10 students did." Jack's heart soared. "That's my girl." He lifted her off the ground in a bear hug. "I knew you could do it." "The final round is tomorrow morning," Emily explained as they walked toward the exit. "And if I place in the top 3, I get the scholarship." Jack froze mid-step. "Tomorrow? But I thought everything was happening today." "They just told us. The judges need time to evaluate all the solutions." Emily looked at him with concern. "Is that a problem?" It was definitely a problem. Jack had counted on returning home today, not needing transportation again until Alexa returned his car. The taxi that had brought them was long gone, having only been arranged for the morning drop-off. "Not at all," he lied, reaching for his phone. "Let me just make a call." He stepped away from Emily and dialed the number Alexa had written on the back of her business card. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Just as Jack was about to give up, the line connected. "Jack?" Alexa's voice sounded distant, with strange noises in the background, something like waves crashing and metal clanging. "Is everything all right?" "Emily made it to the finals," he explained quickly. "But they're tomorrow morning. We need a way to get back to the school." "Congratulations to her." Alexa sounded genuinely pleased. "Don't worry about transportation. I'll arrange everything. Same pickup time tomorrow?" "Yes, 7:45 would be perfect." "Consider it done." "And Jack?" Alexa's voice softened. "Thank you again for trusting me. It means more than you know." Before he could respond, she had hung up. Jack stared at the phone, wondering again what exactly he had gotten himself into. "Everything okay, Dad?" Emily had appeared at his side. "Everything's fine, Sunshine," he assured her. "Our ride home will be here soon, and we'll be back tomorrow for your big finale." While they waited for the taxi, Emily chattered excitedly about the problems she had solved and the friends she had made. Jack listened with half an ear, his mind still on Alexa and her mysterious project. What kind of treasure hunting required an old Ford Focus? And why was she willing to pay so much for it? The taxi that arrived to take them home was even nicer than the morning one. A brand new Mercedes with leather seats and a privacy partition. The driver handed Jack an envelope as they entered. Inside was a gift card for Emily's favorite pizza place and a note. "Celebration dinner on me. Good luck tomorrow." Dad, who is this person?" Emily asked, eyeing the gift card. "And why are they being so nice to us?" Jack considered how much to tell her. Emily was smart, too smart to accept vague explanations for long. "Remember how I said the car was in the shop? Well, that's not exactly true." He took a deep breath. "I lent it to someone who needed it for a special project. She's paying us for it." Emily's eyes widened. "Our old car? But it barely works." "Apparently that's exactly why she wanted it," Jack explained. "She works for a company that finds sunken treasures, and for some reason, our car was perfect for their operation." "Sunken treasures? Like pirate gold?" Emily's face lit up with excitement. "Something like that," Jack smiled, relieved that she wasn't upset about the deception. "She's returning it in 3 days, and we'll have enough money to fix a lot of things around the apartment. Maybe even get you that telescope you've been wanting." Emily bounced in her seat. And honey, this is so cool. It's like we're part of a treasure hunt. Jack laughed at her enthusiasm, feeling some of his worry melt away. I suppose we are in a way. That night, after pizza and ice cream, Jack tucked Emily into bed earlier than usual. She needed rest before the final round tomorrow. Dad? Emily's voice was sleepy but thoughtful. Do you think Mom would be proud of me for making it to the finals? The question caught Jack off guard. Emily rarely spoke about Lisa anymore. I know she would be, he said carefully. Anyone would be proud to have such a brilliant daughter. Emily nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. Good night, Dad. Good night, sunshine. Back in the living room, Jack checked his phone again. No new messages from Alexa. Outside, the night was clear and starry, a stark contrast to yesterday's storm. It seemed impossible that just 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been making the rent payment on time. Now his car was in the hands of a treasure hunter, his daughter was a finalist in a prestigious math competition, and for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope that things might actually turn around for them. As he drifted off to sleep on the couch, Jack wondered what the next 2 days would bring. Little did he know that his decision to trust a stranger on a stormy night was about to change his and Emily's lives forever. The next morning dawned clear and bright, a perfect contrast to the storm that had ushered Alexa into their lives. Jack woke before his alarm, his mind racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Today was not only the final round of Emily's Olympiad, but also the second day without their car. Whatever Alexa was doing with his old Ford, he hoped it was worth the risk he'd taken. In the kitchen, Jack found Emily already dressed and reviewing her notes at the table, a bowl of cereal half-eaten beside her. You're up early, he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Couldn't sleep, she admitted without looking up. I keep thinking about the Fibonacci sequence problem they might ask. Jack smiled. His daughter's dedication never ceased to amaze him. While other kids her age were obsessed with social media and video games, Emily found joy in mathematical patterns and puzzles. The taxi will be here at 7:45, he reminded her. Are you ready for today? Finally, she looked up, her expression a mix of determination and vulnerability that squeezed his heart. What if I fail, Dad? What if I make it all the way to the finals and then choke? Jack sat beside her, placing his hand over hers. Then you'll have gone further than most kids ever do, and we'll try again next year. He squeezed her fingers gently. But you won't fail. You know why? Because I've studied hard, she guessed. That too. But mainly because you're Emily Foster, and you've got more grit in your pinky finger than most people have in their whole body. That earned him a smile, a real one that reached her eyes. Thanks, Dad. At exactly 7:45 a.m., their phone buzzed with a text. Your car is waiting outside. Jack peered through the window expecting another taxi. Instead, he saw a gleaming black SUV with tinted windows idling at the curb. Whoa! Emily breathed as they stepped outside. Is that for us? Before Jack could answer, the driver's door opened, and a tall man in a dark suit emerged. Mr. Foster. Miss Foster? I'm Derek. Mrs. Raines asked me to ensure you arrive at the Olympiad in comfort today. The interior of the SUV was luxurious. Leather seats, climate control, even small bottles of water in a cooler. This is amazing, Emily whispered as they pulled away from their modest apartment complex. Does Ms. Raines own a limo company or something? I'm not exactly sure what she owns, Jack admitted. She's in the treasure hunting business, apparently. Like Indiana Jones? Emily's eyes widened. Maybe more like those shows on the History Channel, Jack chuckled. But with better transportation. Derek remained silent throughout the drive, only speaking when they arrived at Jefferson High School. I'll return at 3 p.m. to pick you up, unless you call with a different time. Thank you, Jack said, still feeling somewhat out of place with this kind of treatment. As they walked toward the entrance, Jack noticed several parents giving them curious looks. Their arrival in a luxury SUV hadn't gone unnoticed. Emily, however, was too focused on the competition ahead to pay attention to anything else. Good luck, he said, hugging her tight before she joined the other finalists. I'll be right here when you finish. The waiting area was filled with anxious parents, many clutching coffee cups like lifelines. Jack found a seat near the back, trying to blend in despite feeling like an imposter among the well-dressed, clearly affluent crowd. First time? Asked a woman in a tailored pantsuit sitting next to him. That obvious, huh? Jack smiled awkwardly. We all looked shell-shocked the first time, she laughed. I'm Margaret Chen. My son Kevin is a finalist too. Jack Foster. My daughter Emily is competing. Margaret nodded approvingly. Emily Foster. Wait, is she the one who solved the implicit differentiation problem in under 2 minutes during yesterday's round? Kevin wouldn't stop talking about her. Jack shrugged, having no idea what implicit differentiation was. She's always been good with numbers. Well, she's got quite a reputation already. The judges were impressed. Margaret leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between us, I think she has a real shot at the scholarship. The thought sent a thrill of hope through Jack. A prestigious school scholarship could change everything for Emily. Opportunities he could never provide otherwise. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a distinguished-looking man in a tweed jacket. "Parents, if I could have your attention," he announced. "I'm Dr. Harrington, head of the mathematics department and chief judge for today's final round. The students are now beginning their challenges. We expect to announce results by 2 p.m. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Jack tried reading the magazines provided but couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting between Emily's competition and Alexa's mysterious project with his car. At 11:30 a.m., his phone vibrated with a text message. "How's the competition going?" "Ah." Jack's fingers hovered over the keypad. After a moment's hesitation, he replied, "Still waiting. Results at 2. "How's my car doing?" The response came almost immediately. "Your car is performing admirably. We've made a significant discovery thanks to it. We'll explain everything tomorrow." A significant discovery? Jack's curiosity intensified. What could they possibly have found using his beat-up old Ford? "Parents, Dr. Harrington had returned to the waiting area earlier than expected. The final evaluations are proceeding faster than anticipated. We'll be announcing results at 1 p.m. in the auditorium." Jack's heart pounded as he filed into the auditorium with the other parents. The stage was set with a table of trophies and certificates, and a large screen displayed the school's emblem. One by one, the 10 finalists filed onto the stage, including Emily, who looked simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. Dr. Harrington approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to announce that this year's Olympiad has showcased some of the finest young mathematical minds I've seen in my 30 years of teaching." The audience applauded politely. "We will now announce our winners, beginning with honorable mentions." Jack held his breath as names were called, students stepping forward to receive certificates. Emily remained in her place, her eyes fixed straight ahead. Our third-place winner, receiving a $1,000 scholarship and summer program invitation, Kevin Chen. Margaret beside him gasped with delight as her son stepped forward. Our second-place winner, receiving a $5,000 scholarship and advanced placement in our partner university's dual credit program, Emily Foster. Jack's heart soared as Emily stepped forward, her face breaking into a stunned smile. Second place. That was a $5,000 scholarship, enough to make a real difference in their education budget. The first-place winner was announced, a serious-looking boy named Aiden who apparently had solved some previously unsolved theorem. Jack barely heard the details, his focus entirely on his daughter, who kept glancing his way with a mixture of pride and disbelief. After the ceremony, Emily rushed into his arms. "Dad, I got second place." "I'm so proud of you, sunshine." Jack lifted her off the ground in a bear hug. "You were amazing up there." "Mr. Foster? Emily? Dr. Harrington approached them, smiling warmly. "I wanted to personally congratulate you. Emily's solution to the partial differential equation was quite innovative. Has she considered applying to our full academic program? The scholarship could be supplemented with financial aid." Jack's smile faltered slightly. Even with a scholarship and financial aid, the prestigious private school would still be beyond their means. "We'll definitely look into it," he said diplomatically. Please do. Students with Emily's talents are rare." Dr. Harrington handed Jack his card. "My direct line is on there. Call if you have any questions about the process." As the man walked away, Jack noticed Emily's expression fall slightly. She understood their financial situation all too well for a 12-year-old. "Hey," he said gently, "this is a day for celebrating. No long faces allowed." "I know," she managed to smile. "Second place is still really good." "It's incredible," Jack corrected her. "And this is just the beginning. We'll figure out the rest, I promise." Before Emily could respond, Jack's phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. "Jack Foster speaking," he answered. "Mr. Foster, this is Derek. I'm outside waiting for you and Miss Emily whenever you're ready." Jack checked his watch. It was only 1:30 p.m., well before their scheduled pickup time. "We'll be right out," he said, puzzled but grateful for the early arrival. The black SUV was parked in the circular driveway, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Derek stood beside it, opening the door as they approached. "Congratulations on your achievement, Miss Foster," he said with a slight bow. Emily blushed. "Thank you. How did you know?" "Miss Raines has her ways," was all he said as he closed the door behind them. Inside the vehicle, Jack was surprised to find a small gift box on the seat with Emily's name on it. She opened it cautiously to reveal a beautiful compass pendant on a silver chain. "There's a note," Emily said, unfolding a small card, "to help you navigate your bright future. Congratulations." That was thoughtful," Jack said, both touched and increasingly curious about this woman who seemed to know so much about them. As they drove away from the school, Jack expected to head back to their apartment. Instead, Derek took a different route. "Excuse me," Jack leaned forward. "Where are we going?" "Ms. Raines has arranged a celebratory lunch," Derek explained. "If that's acceptable to you both," Jack hesitated. They had already accepted transportation and now gifts. How much deeper was he getting into this strange arrangement? "Dad, can we go?" Emily asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "Please?" Looking at his daughter's face, happier than he'd seen her in months, Jack found he couldn't refuse. "Sure, why not?" 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of Oceanic, one of the most exclusive seafood restaurants in the city. Jack had passed it many times but never imagined dining there, where a single meal cost more than his daily earnings. "Mrs. Raines is waiting for you inside," Derek said, opening their door. "I'll be here when you're finished." The restaurant's interior was elegant without being ostentatious, muted blues and whites with subtle nautical touches. A hostess led them to a private dining area in the back, where a woman sat alone at a table by a large aquarium. Jack recognized her immediately, though she looked quite different from the rain-soaked stranger who had appeared at his door 2 nights ago. Alexa Raines was dressed in a tailored navy suit, her dark hair styled elegantly, and a confident smile on her face as she rose to greet them. "Jack, Emily," she extended her hand. "It's wonderful to finally meet you properly." Emily shook her hand, visibly impressed. "Your necklace is beautiful. Thank you for mine." "You're welcome," Alexa smiled. "I heard about your achievement today. Second place in a competition of that caliber is extraordinary." "You know about the Olympiad?" Emily asked. "I make it my business to know about exceptional talent," Alexa replied, gesturing for them to sit, "especially in mathematics." Throughout lunch, a parade of exquisite seafood dishes that Emily approached with scientific curiosity, Alexa asked Emily questions about her interests, her academic goals, and her favorite mathematical concepts. Jack noticed how she spoke to Emily as an equal, never condescending or artificially simplifying her language. "So," Jack finally said as dessert was served, "are you going to tell us why you needed my car? And what this significant discovery is all about?" Alexa's expression turned serious. "Tomorrow when I return your car, I'll explain everything in detail. But I can tell you this much. Your Ford Focus helped us access a coastal area that larger vehicles couldn't navigate. We've located what we believe is a Spanish galleon that sank in 1715, carrying a substantial treasure." Emily's eyes widened. "A real shipwreck? With gold and everything?" "Gold, silver, artifacts of historical significance," Alexa nodded. "If our initial assessment is correct, it could be one of the most valuable discoveries off the eastern seaboard in decades." "And my car helped you find this?" Jack was incredulous. "Your car helped us transport specialized equipment through terrain that would have been impossible otherwise," Alexa explained. "The specific dimensions and weight distribution made it perfect for our needs." She glanced at her watch. "I apologize, but I need to get back to the site. Our team is still working on preliminary documentation." She handed Jack another envelope. "The remaining $4,000 as promised. Your car will be returned tomorrow afternoon." Jack stared at the envelope, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. This wasn't a dream or an elaborate scam. He had actually helped a treasure hunting operation and now held enough money to clear several months of overdue bills. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "There's nothing to say yet," Alexa smiled mysteriously. "But tomorrow I have a proposition that might interest you both." She turned to Emily. "Especially someone with your mathematical abilities." As they watched Alexa leave the restaurant, Emily turned to her father with wide eyes. "Dad, I think we just met a real-life treasure hunter." Jack nodded slowly, still processing everything. "Looks that way, sunshine. Do you think her proposition has something to do with the shipwreck?" "I guess we'll find out tomorrow," Jack replied, fingering the envelope with a mixture of relief and trepidation. On the ride home, Emily chatted excitedly about shipwrecks and Spanish galleons, having apparently researched the topic on her phone during lunch. Jack listened with half an ear, his mind preoccupied with what tomorrow might bring. The black SUV dropped them off at their apartment complex, looking dramatically out of place among the old sedans and pickup trucks that populated the parking lot. Several neighbors watched curiously from their windows as Jack and Emily walked inside. That night, as Jack counted out the cash in the privacy of his bedroom, $4,000 in $100 bills, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief at being able to pay off the most pressing debts, disbelief at how quickly their fortunes had changed, and underneath it all, a growing curiosity about what Alexa Rains would propose tomorrow. As he tucked the money into his sock drawer, his gaze fell on the family photo on his nightstand. Himself, Lisa, and a 3-year-old Emily at the beach, all smiles and sunburned noses. It was the last vacation they had taken as a family before things fell apart. "We're going to be okay," he whispered to Emily's younger self in the photo. "I think things are finally turning around for us." Little did he know just how dramatically their lives were about to change. Jack woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the sound of excited voices outside his window. Rubbing sleep from his eyes, he checked the time. 6:47 a.m. Far too early for the usual neighborhood activity. He pulled back the curtain and squinted into the morning light. What he saw made him drop the curtain and stumble backward in shock. A helicopter, sleek, black, and undeniably expensive, was descending onto the vacant lot beside their apartment complex. "Dad!" Emily burst into his room, still in her math formula pajamas, her eyes wide with excitement. "There's a helicopter landing outside." "I see that," Jack muttered, pulling on a t-shirt over his pajama bottoms. "Stay here while I check what's going on." By the time Jack reached the building's entrance, a small crowd of residents had gathered, pointing and speculating about the unexpected arrival. The helicopter's rotors were slowing, and the side door opened to reveal a familiar figure. Alexa Rains stepped out, dressed in khaki cargo pants, a fitted black t-shirt, and sturdy boots. A stark contrast to her elegant appearance yesterday. Behind her came 2 men carrying equipment cases. When she spotted Jack in the crowd, she smiled and walked directly toward him, ignoring the curious stares of his neighbors. "Good morning, Jack," she called over the diminishing whine of the rotors. "I apologize for the early arrival. We've had some developments overnight." "You brought back my car?" Jack asked, scanning the area for his old Ford. Alexa's smile faltered slightly. "That's part of what I need to discuss with you. Is Emily awake?" This concerns her, too. Before Jack could respond, Emily appeared beside him, having ignored his instruction to stay inside. "I'm right here," she announced, staring at the helicopter with undisguised fascination. "Perfect," Alexa said. "Could we speak privately? I have something important to show you both." 10 minutes later, Jack, Emily, and Alexa were seated around their small kitchen table. The 2 men from the helicopter remained outside with the equipment. Jack had hastily made coffee, acutely aware of the apartment's shabbiness compared to the luxury restaurant where they'd met yesterday. "First, let me update you on our discovery," Alexa began, spreading out several photographs on the table. They showed what appeared to be underwater images of wooden beams, corroded metal, and shapes encrusted with marine growth. "These are from the wreck we located with the help of your car. Preliminary dating confirms it's the Santa Cruz, a Spanish galleon that disappeared in 1715 during a hurricane." Emily leaned forward, studying the images intently. "That's so cool. Are those real Spanish coins?" "Yes, doubloons to be precise." Alexa pointed to several round objects in one photo. "We've only recovered a few items for identification purposes. The real treasure remains untouched for now. And you found this because of my car?" Jack still couldn't wrap his head around the connection. "Your Ford Focus has exactly the right wheelbase and ground clearance to navigate the narrow coastal access path without getting stuck or damaging the sensitive equipment we needed to transport," Alexa explained. "Most modern vehicles are too wide or sit too low to the ground. We tried 4 different models before realizing we needed something unconventional." "So where is my car now?" Jack asked. Alexa's expression turned apologetic. "That's the complication. During our final survey yesterday evening, there was an incident. A sudden high tide partially flooded the coastal path. Your car was submerged," Jack blinked. "My car is underwater?" "It was. We've recovered it, but the damage is extensive. The engine is beyond repair." Alexa reached into her bag and retrieved another envelope. "I'm prepared to compensate you fully. This contains $10,000, twice what we agreed upon, given the circumstances." Jack stared at the envelope, stunned by the amount. $10,000 was more than he earned in 6 months. "But that's not why I'm here," Alexa continued. "That's merely settling our previous arrangement. I've come with a new proposition, one that could change both your lives significantly. Emily, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. Does it have to do with the shipwreck? Indeed it does. Alexa smiled at her perceptiveness. Our team has located what we believe is the captain's cabin, which likely contains the ship's manifest and navigation logs. These documents are priceless from a historical perspective and could also lead us to a second shipwreck, one carrying an even greater treasure. What does this have to do with us? Jack asked cautiously. I want to hire you both, Alexa stated plainly. Jack, your background in security and your evident resourcefulness make you valuable to our operation. And Emily, she turned to the girl, the navigational calculations we need to perform require not just mathematical skill, but a specific type of mathematical thinking, the kind you displayed at the Olympiad. Emily's eyes widened. You want me to help find treasure? But I'm just a kid. A kid who can solve partial differential equations that stump college students, Alexa countered. Age is irrelevant. Ability is what matters. Jack raised a hand. Wait a minute. Emily is 12. She has school, responsibilities, which we would accommodate, Alexa interjected smoothly. We're proposing a 3-week expedition during which Emily would continue her studies with a qualified tutor. In fact, the practical application of mathematics in our work would likely advance her skills beyond what traditional schooling could provide. And what exactly would this expedition involve? Jack asked. Alexa leaned forward, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. We would fly to our research vessel off the Florida coast. While our dive team works on recovering and documenting artifacts, Emily would assist our historical navigation expert in analyzing the ship's logs and charts. You, Jack, would serve as security coordinator for the recovered artifacts, a position that requires someone with an unimpeachable sense of integrity. The compensation, she added after a pause, would be significant. $50,000 for the 3 weeks, plus a percentage of the salvage value if we locate the second shipwreck based on Emily's calculations. Jack nearly choked on his coffee. $50,000? Emily was practically bouncing in her seat. Dad, that's enough for college. Maybe even for the private school, Doctor. Harrington mentioned. There's something else, Alexa said, her tone softening. The second shipwreck we're seeking reportedly carried not just gold and silver, but a collection of mathematical instruments and texts from the Spanish Royal Academy. Items of particular historical value to someone with Emily's interests. Jack studied Alexa's face, looking for any sign of deception or manipulation. He found none, only genuine excitement and what appeared to be sincere admiration for Emily's abilities. Could we have a moment to discuss this privately? He asked finally. Of course, Alexa stood smoothly. I'll wait outside with my team. Take all the time you need. The moment the door closed behind her, Emily grabbed Jack's arm. Dad, we have to do this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's also completely outside our normal lives, Jack cautioned. We don't know these people, this company. We know they paid us more than they promised for the car, Emily pointed out. And yesterday's lunch and the rides to the Olympiad. They've been nothing but generous. That doesn't mean we should jump on a boat with them, Jack sighed. Sunshine, this is a big decision. 3 weeks away from home, your school, everything familiar. Emily's expression grew serious. Dad, you've been working 3 jobs for years. You're always tired, always worried about money. This could change everything for us. She paused, then added quietly, and I really want to see those mathematical instruments. Jack ran a hand through his hair, torn between caution and the undeniable opportunity before them. What about your classes? You can't just disappear for 3 weeks. Alexa said they'd provide a tutor, Emily reminded him. And it's almost summer break anyway. I'd only miss 2 weeks of actual school. Jack looked around their small apartment. The worn furniture, the water stain on the ceiling they couldn't afford to fix, the stack of bills on the counter. Then he looked at his daughter, whose brilliant mind deserved every opportunity he could provide. Let me make a call first, he said, pulling out his phone. 20 minutes later, after a quick background check on Atlantic Exploration, a legitimate and well-respected marine archaeology company, according to their online presence, and a conversation with Emily's principal, who was surprisingly supportive of the educational opportunity, Jack invited Alexa back inside. We have some conditions, he said as she sat down. Emily will keep up with her schoolwork. We want daily communication with the mainland. And I want everything in writing, the compensation, the duties, the safety protocols. Alexa smiled. Already prepared. She produced a folder containing detailed contracts. Our legal team anticipated your concerns. Everything is outlined here, including comprehensive insurance coverage for both of you. Jack skimmed the documents, surprised by their thoroughness. The compensation was exactly as promised, with additional benefits he hadn't expected. Health insurance coverage for the duration, educational credits for Emily, even a clothing allowance for appropriate shipboard attire. When would we leave? He asked, still not quite believing they were considering this. Today, ideally, Alexa replied. The tides and weather conditions are optimal for the next phase of our operation. We'd fly directly to Key West, then take a short boat ride to our research vessel. Emily's eyes grew wide. Today? But we need to pack, make arrangements. All taken care of, Alexa assured her. We have everything you might need on board. Of course, you're welcome to bring personal items and necessities, but we can be ready to depart within the hour if you're willing. Jack and Emily exchanged a look, hers pleading, his still uncertain but softening. My other job, Jack began. I can't just disappear. Call them, Emily urged. The warehouse owes you vacation time. The supermarket already cut your hours last month. And the night security job. Well, you hate that one anyway. Jack couldn't argue with her logic. And the truth was, a part of him, a part he'd suppressed for years under the weight of responsibility, was excited by the adventure this represented. All right, he said finally. We're in, but I reserve the right to bring us home at any point if I feel the situation isn't as represented. Absolutely, Alexa agreed, extending her hand. You have my personal guarantee that everything will be exactly as I've described, possibly even better. As they shook hands, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he had just crossed a threshold from which there was no return. For better or worse, their lives were about to change dramatically. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Jack made calls to his employers, all surprisingly accommodating once he mentioned a family emergency requiring immediate attention, while Emily packed a small bag with essentials, including her prized collection of math textbooks and the compass pendant Alexa had given her. Their neighbors watched in amazement as the Foster family, known primarily for their quiet, hard-working presence, boarded a helicopter with the mysterious woman who had appeared that morning. Mrs. Patel from next door even recorded the departure on her phone, certain that something extraordinary was happening. She had no idea just how extraordinary it would prove to be. The helicopter ride was Emily's first, and she spent it pressed against the window, marveling at the landscape transforming beneath them. Jack, meanwhile, studied the two crew members who had accompanied Alexa. Martin, the navigation specialist with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual look of distraction, and Darius, the security chief whose military bearing and watchful eyes reminded Jack of his own time in the Army before Emily was born. We'll refuel in Virginia and again in Georgia, Alexa explained over the headset communication system. Total flight time to Key West is approximately 6 hours. The research vessel, what's it called? Emily asked. The Horizon Seeker, Alexa replied with evident pride. A 120-foot converted research vessel equipped with state-of-the-art technology for underwater exploration and artifact recovery. And the crew? Jack inquired. How many people are we talking about? 15 core personnel, Darius answered. Dive team, research specialists, medical officer, engineers, and support staff, all thoroughly vetted and with extensive experience in marine archaeology. As they flew southward, the landscape below changing from urban sprawl to the green expanses of Virginia and the Carolinas, Alexa briefed them more thoroughly on the Santa Cruz and the treasure it had carried. The galleon was part of the 1715 treasure fleet, a Spanish convoy transporting wealth from the colonies back to Spain, she explained, showing them digital reproductions of historical documents on her tablet. A hurricane scattered the fleet near what's now Florida. Most of the ships were lost, and while some have been discovered over the years, the Santa Cruz remained elusive until now. What makes you think there's a second shipwreck? Jack asked. Historical records suggest the Santa Cruz was traveling with a smaller vessel, the San Miguel, which carried specialized items for the Spanish Royal Academy of Sciences. Martin interjected, his voice animated with scholarly enthusiasm. The two ships were reportedly within sight of each other when the storm hit. Finding one likely means the other is nearby. And that's where Emily's calculations will come in, Alexa added. The navigational logs, if recovered intact, should contain the relative positions of the two vessels. Combined with our knowledge of the storm's path and the ocean currents of that period, we can potentially triangulate the San Miguel's final resting place. Emily was practically glowing with excitement. So I'd be using historical navigation methods combined with modern oceanographic models? That's so cool. Jack watched his daughter's enthusiasm with a mixture of pride and lingering concern. The opportunity was incredible, yes, but something still nagged at him. Perhaps it was simply the speed with which everything was happening, or the lingering disbelief that their ordinary lives could transform so dramatically in just 3 days. As the helicopter continued southward, refueling as promised in Virginia, Jack found a moment alone with Alexa while Emily was being shown the navigation systems by Martin. "Why us?" he asked directly. "There must be professional mathematicians, security experts you could have hired. Why a 12-year-old girl and her dad from a rundown apartment complex?" Alexa considered him thoughtfully before answering. "Treasure hunting isn't just about technical expertise, Jack. It's about intuition, about seeing patterns others miss." She glanced toward Emily, who was listening raptly as Martin explained how celestial navigation worked. "Your daughter has a rare gift, not just intelligence, but a particular way of thinking. We've been monitoring math competitions across several states, looking for exactly her type of talent." "You've been scouting middle school math competitions for treasure hunters?" Jack's skepticism was evident. "For minds that can help us unravel historical puzzles, yes," Alexa corrected. "As for you, let's just say that someone willing to lend their only means of transportation to a stranger, despite their own difficult circumstances, possesses a quality we value highly in our organization: the ability to take calculated risks for potentially significant rewards." Jack wasn't entirely satisfied with the explanation, but before he could press further, Darius announced they were beginning their descent toward their second refueling stop. The Georgia airfield was small and private, with a single hangar and a modest terminal building. As they touched down, Jack noticed another helicopter already on the tarmac, larger and more rugged-looking than theirs, with what appeared to be custom modifications for marine operations. "That's our heavy transport," Alexa explained, following his gaze. "It will carry some additional equipment we'll need for the next phase of recovery." While the helicopters were being refueled, they took the opportunity to stretch their legs and enjoy a catered lunch that had been arranged in advance. Emily, who had been subsisting mainly on school cafeteria food and Jack's limited culinary repertoire, marveled at the fresh seafood and exotic fruits. "Is it always like this?" she asked Alexa. "The fancy food in private helicopters?" Alexa laughed. "Not always. Sometimes we're sleeping in tents on remote beaches or eating cold rations during storms. Treasure hunting has its glamorous moments, but it's mostly hard work, patience, and occasionally profound disappointment. But it's worth it," Martin added, "for those rare moments when you hold history in your hands, when you touch something no human has touched for centuries." As they prepared to board the helicopter again for the final leg of their journey, Jack noticed a black SUV pulling up to the airfield. Two men in business attire emerged, their manners suggesting importance. Alexa noticed his attention and frowned slightly. "Investors," she explained quietly. "The necessary evil of our operation. They provide the capital. We provide the expertise and manpower." "They don't look happy," Jack observed as one of the men gestured emphatically while speaking on his phone. "They rarely are," Alexa sighed. "The timeline of academic research and the timeline of financial return are perpetually at odds." She straightened her shoulders. "I should greet them briefly. Please board the helicopter. I'll join you momentarily." Jack and Emily complied, but through the helicopter's window, Jack watched the interaction with interest. Even from a distance, the conversation appeared tense. Alexa maintained a professional demeanor, but her body language suggested resistance to whatever the men were proposing. "What do you think that's about?" Emily asked, following his gaze. "Business disagreements, probably," Jack replied, though something about the scene left him uneasy. When Alexa rejoined them 5 minutes later, her expression was composed, but Jack detected a new tension in her manner. "Everything okay?" he asked as they lifted off. "Just the usual debates about methodology versus expediency," she replied with a dismissive wave. "Nothing that affects our mission." As the helicopter gained altitude, Jack glanced back to see the two men watching their departure, their expressions unreadable from a distance. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the encounter than Alexa was sharing. The final hours of their journey took them over the stunning coastline of Florida, the landscape below transforming into a patchwork of beaches, marshes, and the turquoise expanse of the Atlantic. Emily's face was pressed against the window again, her expression one of pure wonder. "Look, Dad," she exclaimed as they approached the Florida Keys. "You can actually see the coral reefs from up here." The helicopter began its descent toward a private helipad in Key West, the southernmost point of the continental United States. As they touched down, Jack felt a strange mix of emotions, anticipation, lingering concern, and an unfamiliar sense of possibility that he hadn't experienced in years. Waiting for them at the helipad was a sleek speedboat with Atlantic Exploration's logo emblazoned on the side. A tanned, weather-beaten man with salt and pepper hair greeted them with a wide smile. "Welcome to paradise," he called over the diminishing rotor noise. "I'm Captain Rodriguez. The Horizon Seeker is anchored just offshore, awaiting your arrival." As their luggage was transferred to the speedboat, Jack took a moment to appreciate the surreal nature of their situation. Just 3 days ago, his biggest concern had been making rent while saving enough for Emily's school supplies. Now they were in Key West, about to board a research vessel in search of centuries-old Spanish treasure. Life, it seemed, could change in an instant, with a knock at the door on a stormy night. The speedboat cut through the turquoise waters, sending spray high into the air as it raced toward the horizon. Emily sat at the bow, her face glowing with excitement as the wind whipped her hair. Jack kept a protective arm around her shoulders, still adjusting to the radical turn their lives had taken. "There she is," Captain Rodriguez announced, pointing ahead. Jack followed his gesture and saw it. The Horizon Seeker, larger and more impressive than he had imagined. The 120-foot vessel gleamed white against the deep blue of the ocean, bristling with sophisticated equipment. A large crane dominated the stern, while satellite dishes and communication arrays adorned the upper deck. The ship's hull bore the Atlantic Exploration logo, the same compass and shipwreck silhouette from Alexa's business card. "She's beautiful," Emily breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "State-of-the-art research vessel," Rodriguez explained proudly. "Custom-built for marine archaeology. We can stay at sea for weeks, process and preserve artifacts on board, and map the seafloor with accuracy down to a few centimeters." As they approached, Jack noticed crew members moving purposefully across the decks. Some were preparing diving equipment, while others monitored instruments or secured supplies. It had the atmosphere of a well-coordinated operation, something Jack appreciated from his military days. The speedboat slowed as it approached the ship's boarding platform, a hydraulic dock that had been lowered to water level. Rodriguez expertly maneuvered alongside it, and crew members secured the boat with practiced efficiency. "Welcome aboard the Horizon Seeker." A tall woman with copper-colored hair tied in a practical braid greeted them as they stepped onto the platform. "I'm Dr. Sofia Martinez, Chief Archaeologist and Dive Coordinator. Dr. Martinez oversees all artifact recovery and initial preservation," Alexa explained as they shook hands. "She's one of the world's foremost experts on colonial Spanish maritime artifacts." "Just Sofia, please," the archaeologist insisted with a warm smile. "We're informal at sea." She bent slightly to address Emily directly. "And you must be our mathematics prodigy. I've heard impressive things about you." Emily blushed but stood a little straighter. "I like solving puzzles." "Then you're going to love what we have waiting for you," Sophia replied. "Some of these navigation logs are the ultimate puzzles, centuries old and written in a mixture of Spanish, Latin, and navigational shorthand." A series of introductions followed as they made their way up to the main deck. Jack tried to memorize the names and roles. Dr. Wichin, Historical Documents Specialist; James Kelly, Dive Master; Maria Lopez, Artifact Preservation Expert; and half a dozen others whose specialties range from underwater photography to mechanical engineering. "It's like a floating university," Emily whispered to Jack, clearly impressed by the academic credentials being casually mentioned. "And this," Alexa said finally, gesturing to a lean, weathered man with steel gray hair and startlingly blue eyes, "is Professor Thomas Blackwood, our project director and historical navigation expert." Thomas was the one who first theorized the location of the Santa Cruz based on wind pattern analyses from colonial records. Professor Blackwood nodded curtly, his gaze sharp and assessing as it moved from Jack to Emily. "Ms. Raines speaks highly of your mathematical intuition, young lady. I look forward to seeing if you live up to the praise." Jack felt Emily stiffen slightly beside him at the challenging tone, but she met the professor's gaze steadily. "I look forward to learning from you, sir." A hint of approval flickered in Blackwood's eyes before he turned to Alexa. "The preliminary conservation of the artifacts we recovered yesterday is complete. I believe you'll want to inspect them before our next dive." "Absolutely," Alexa agreed. "Jack, Emily, Would you like to see some genuine 18th century Spanish treasure? The conservation lab occupied a significant portion of the ship's interior. Temperature and humidity-controlled chambers housed artifacts in various stages of processing, while specialized workstations featured microscopes, ultrasonic cleaning equipment, and computer imaging systems. Dr. Lopez guided them to a central table where several items lay carefully arranged on padded surfaces. Despite the technicality of her explanations about conservation methods, Jack found himself mesmerized by the objects before them. Tangible pieces of history recovered from the seafloor. These silver coins are 8 real pieces, commonly known as pieces of 8, she explained, indicating several silver discs. Though discolored by centuries underwater, the distinctive shield and columns design was still visible on their surfaces. They were the common currency of the Spanish Empire, and indeed much of the world in the 18th century. Emily leaned close, her eyes wide. Real pirate treasure, she breathed. Indeed, though pirates preferred to steal it rather than recover it through archaeology, Dr. Lopez smiled. And this, she continued, moving to a glass case containing what appeared to be a brass instrument, is particularly exciting. A mariner's astrolabe used for celestial navigation. It's remarkably well preserved due to being secured in a lead-lined case. Professor Blackwood appeared at their side, his earlier gruffness softened by evident passion for the artifacts. The astrolabe is Spanish-made, but the design shows Moorish influence. Finding it intact is extraordinarily rare. Most were melted down for their metal over the centuries. Emily studied the instrument with fascination. So they used this to measure star angles and calculate latitude? Precisely, Blackwood nodded, visibly warming to her interest. Combined with accurate timekeeping and charts, it allowed navigators to determine their position with remarkable accuracy for the technology of the time. Speaking of charts, Alexa interjected, Thomas, perhaps you could show them what we recovered this morning? Blackwood led them to another workstation where a large, fragile-looking document lay flat under specialized lighting. Despite significant degradation around the edges, the central portion revealed carefully drawn coastlines, depth soundings, and angular markings. This is a section of the Santa Cruz's navigational chart, he explained, his voice taking on a reverent quality. It survived because it was stored in an oilskin pouch inside a cedar box, standard practice for important documents at sea. Jack was impressed but puzzled. It's beautiful, but how does this help find the second shipwreck? It looks like a regular map. But it's what isn't immediately visible that interests us, Blackwood replied, switching on an ultraviolet light that revealed previously invisible markings on the chart. Faint lines and notations that glowed a pale blue under the specialized illumination. Secondary ink, Emily murmured, leaning closer. Invisible under normal light? Iron gall ink fades differently than the copper-based inks used for the primary chart elements, Blackwood explained. These annotations appear to be the captain's private notes, including what we believe are references to the companion ship, the San Miguel. He pointed to several notations in faded Spanish. These indicate relative positions and planned rendezvous points. If we can fully decipher them and correlate them with what we know about the hurricane's path, you can triangulate where the San Miguel might have gone down, Emily finished, her mind clearly racing ahead. Blackwood gave her an appraising look. Perhaps Ms. Rains wasn't exaggerating your abilities after all. Mr. Foster, Ms. Foster, Alexa interrupted gently. You must be tired from the journey. Perhaps we should show you to your quarters so you can settle in before dinner? We'll have plenty of time to discuss the artifacts and charts tomorrow. Jack realized suddenly that the day's excitement had masked his fatigue. The adrenaline of helicopter flights, speedboat rides, and Spanish treasure was wearing off, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion. That sounds like a good idea, he agreed, noticing Emily stifling a yawn, despite her evident desire to keep examining the artifacts. Their quarters were located on the upper deck, a compact but comfortable cabin with twin beds, a small bathroom, and a porthole offering a stunning view of the sunset over the Atlantic. Their meager luggage had already been delivered and unpacked, with additional clothing provided as promised. Practical items suitable for shipboard life. This is nicer than our apartment, Emily observed, testing the surprisingly comfortable mattress. Dinner is at 7 p.m. in the main mess, Alexa informed them. It's casual, but a good opportunity to meet the rest of the crew. I'll leave you to rest. Once alone, Jack sat heavily on his bed, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. "What have we gotten ourselves into, sunshine?" he asked, half to himself. Emily was already at the porthole, watching seabirds wheel against the darkening sky. "Something amazing," she replied simply. "Something most people only dream about." Jack couldn't argue with that assessment. Despite his lingering concerns, he had to admit that Alexa and her team had delivered exactly what they promised, and more. The professional operation, the genuine artifacts, the evident expertise of the crew, it all pointed to a legitimate, if extraordinary, opportunity. "Just promise me you'll tell me if anything feels wrong," he said. "This is all new territory for us." Emily turned from the window, her expression suddenly serious beyond her years. "Dad, I know you're worried, but isn't this better than you working yourself to death at 3 jobs while I pretend not to notice how tired you are all the time?" The directness of her observation caught Jack off guard. He sometimes forgot how perceptive his daughter was, how much she understood about their struggles despite his efforts to shield her. "You shouldn't have had to worry about that," he said quietly. "And you shouldn't have had to work so hard just to keep us afloat," she countered. "Maybe this is our chance to change things, to have a different kind of life." Before Jack could respond, a gentle knock at the door announced the arrival of a crew member bearing fresh towels and a ship's orientation packet. The moment for heart-to-heart conversation passed, but Emily's words lingered in Jack's mind as they prepared for dinner. The main mess was a surprisingly elegant space for a research vessel, with polished wood tables and comfortable seating for about 20 people. Large windows offered panoramic views of the ocean, now reflecting the deep purples and oranges of sunset. Classical music played softly in the background, creating an atmosphere more reminiscent of an upscale restaurant than a ship's dining area. Most of the crew had already assembled when Jack and Emily arrived. Alexa waved them over to a table where she sat with Professor Blackwood, Dr. Martinez, and an older gentleman Jack hadn't met yet. "Jack, Emily, I'd like you to meet Dr. Richard Harmon, our project historian." Alexa introduced the distinguished-looking man with a neatly trimmed white beard. Richard has spent 40 years studying the 1715 treasure fleet and its cultural significance. "A pleasure, Doctor." Harmon smiled warmly, his British accent pronounced. "Mrs. Saiz, Raines tells me you're quite the mathematical mind, young lady. We could certainly use such talents in historical research." Dinner was a sumptuous affair. Fresh seafood, locally sourced vegetables, and decadent desserts served by a chef who apparently had trained at a Michelin-starred restaurant before choosing the adventure of life at sea. Throughout the meal, conversation flowed easily among the academics and crew members, with Emily holding her own remarkably well in discussions that ranged from celestial navigation to the economic impact of Spanish treasure fleets on global trade. Jack observed with quiet pride how his daughter adapted to this new environment, asking insightful questions and absorbing information with evident delight. This was a world he could never have given her access to on his own, a world of knowledge, discovery, and opportunity that transcended their modest circumstances. As coffee was served, Alexa gently tapped her glass for attention. "Before we disperse for the evening, I'd like to outline tomorrow's agenda. Weather permitting, Dive Team Alpha will begin operations at 0600 hours, focusing on the captain's quarters section of the wreck. Dr. Martinez will oversee artifact recovery, with Mr. Kelly serving as primary safety diver." She turned to Emily. "Emily, if you're willing, Professor Blackwood would like you to join him in the navigation lab at 0900 hours to begin analyzing the chart fragments we've recovered. Your fresh perspective might help us see patterns we've overlooked." Emily straightened in her chair, clearly honored by the assignment. "I'd be happy to help. And Jack," Alexa continued, "Darius would appreciate your assistance in revising our security protocols for artifact handling. Your experience in both warehouse logistics and security seems particularly relevant to our needs." Jack nodded, secretly relieved to have a concrete role that utilized his skills. "Of course." As dinner concluded and the group began to disperse, Professor Blackwood approached Emily. His earlier skepticism had notably softened, replaced by a cautious professional interest. "Before you retire for the evening, young lady, would you mind looking at something? I've been puzzling over a sequence of numbers in the captain's log that might benefit from a fresh mathematical perspective." Emily glanced at Jack, who nodded his approval. "I'll wait for you on deck," he told her. "Don't be too long. It's been a long day." While Emily followed Blackwood to the navigation lab, Jack made his way to the main deck. The night was clear and starlit, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of salt and distant lands. The Horizon Seeker's lights illuminated the immediate waters around the ship, creating a glowing island in the vast darkness of the Atlantic. He found a quiet spot by the railing and gazed out at the star-scattered sky, still processing the whirlwind of changes that had brought them here. 3 days ago, he had been a struggling single father with mounting bills and dwindling options. Now he stood on the deck of a research vessel, part of a treasure-hunting expedition that seemed lifted from the pages of an adventure novel. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" Alexa's voice came softly from behind him. Jack turned to find her approaching with 2 mugs of what smelled like hot chocolate. She handed him one and joined him at the railing. "I thought you might appreciate something a bit comforting after such an overwhelming day," she explained. "Thanks," Jack said, grateful for the warm mug between his hands. The evening air had turned cool over the water. "Everything's so much. In every way," Alexa smiled. "Information overload is common in the first days of an expedition. It will all start to make sense as you settle into the rhythm of shipboard life." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the play of moonlight on the water. Finally, Jack voiced the question that had been nagging at him since their departure. Those men at the airfield in Georgia, the investors, what were they really upset about? Alexa's expression remained neutral, but Jack sensed a slight tension in her posture. Investors always want faster results, bigger finds, and less emphasis on historical preservation. It's the nature of the relationship. "And that's all it was? A routine disagreement?" She hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. "Not entirely. They're pressing for a more aggressive recovery schedule. I prefer a methodical approach that prioritizes documentation and preservation. Archaeological integrity versus commercial expediency. It's an old tension in this field." "And which side usually wins?" "It depends on the leverage each side holds." She sipped her hot chocolate thoughtfully. "Currently, with the discovery of the Santa Cruz, I have the stronger position. But if we don't locate the San Miguel soon, that could change." Jack studied her profile in the moonlight, trying to gauge what remained unsaid. "Is that why you brought us on board? To help tip the balance in your favor?" Alexa turned to face him directly. "I brought you on board because Emily has a rare talent that could genuinely help us solve a historical puzzle. And because you, Jack Foster, showed a quality that's increasingly rare in this world, the willingness to trust a stranger based on nothing but intuition and a handshake. Some might call that foolishness," Jack observed. "Perhaps, but in my experience, the line between foolishness and courage is often defined only by the outcome." She smiled. "And so far, I'd say your decision is leaning toward the courageous side of that equation." Before Jack could respond, the door to the deck opened and Emily emerged with Professor Blackwood. Even from a distance, Jack could see the excitement in his daughter's face. "Dad," she called, hurrying over. "Professor Blackwood showed me the captain's log entries, and there's this repeating numerical sequence that doesn't make sense as coordinates or measurements. But I think it might be a simple cipher, a mathematical key for encoding information they didn't want others to read easily." Blackwood followed at a more measured pace, but his expression showed unusual animation. "Your daughter has an extraordinary mind, Mr. Foster. She recognized a pattern in minutes that we've been puzzling over for days." "It's just a theory," Emily added quickly, though she was clearly pleased by the praise. "We need to test it against the other entries to be sure." "Which we will do first thing tomorrow," Blackwood confirmed. "For now, I believe you both deserve some rest after your journey." As they bid goodnight to Alexa and Blackwood, Jack couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in Emily's quick integration into this team of experts. Perhaps this unlikely adventure really would be the opportunity they both needed, a chance to leverage Emily's brilliant mind without the constraints of their limited resources. Back in their cabin, as Emily chattered excitedly about ciphers and navigational calculations, Jack allowed himself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, their fortunes were finally turning for the better. Jack woke before dawn, momentarily disoriented by the gentle rocking of the ship and the unfamiliar sounds of equipment and distant voices. Years of early shifts had trained his body to function on minimal sleep, and old habits died hard. Careful not to wake Emily, who was still deeply asleep, he dressed quietly in the provided clothing, cargo pants and a moisture-wicking shirt emblazoned with the Atlantic Exploration logo. The quality of the items impressed him. These weren't cheap promotional items, but professional gear designed for the marine environment. On deck, the pre-dawn activity was already in full swing. The dive team was preparing equipment, checking tanks and regulators with methodical precision. Powerful lights had been positioned to illuminate a portion of the ocean where yellow and white buoys marked what Jack assumed was the wreck site. "You're an early riser," observed Darius, the security chief, approaching with 2 mugs of coffee. He offered one to Jack. "Military habit?" Jack accepted the coffee gratefully. "Army, 2 tours. You?" "Marines, Force Recon." That explained the man's bearing and watchful demeanor. "Old habits stick with us, don't they?" "Some more than others," Jack agreed. "Your dive team looks professional." "Best in the business," Darius confirmed. James Kelly, our dive master, trained SEAL teams in underwater recovery before joining the private sector. He runs a tight operation. They watched as Kelly conducted a final briefing with the dive team. 4 men and 2 women in black wetsuits, their faces serious as they reviewed what appeared to be underwater maps and hand signals. "Today's objective is the captain's quarters and officer's wardroom," Darius explained. "Based on the ship's layout and the artifacts we've already recovered, we believe that's where the most significant navigational documents will be found." "And that's what Emily will be helping analyze?" "Exactly. Professor Blackwood is brilliant with historical context, but sometimes fresh eyes, especially mathematically inclined ones, see patterns that specialists miss." As the eastern sky began to lighten, painting the horizon in delicate pinks and golds, the first dive team entered the water. Their descent was marked by streams of bubbles that gradually diminished as they reached the wreck below. "How deep is it?" Jack asked. "About 90 feet at this section," Darius replied. "Relatively shallow for a wreck this old, which is part of why the preservation is so good. The reef structure provided some protection from currents and storms over the centuries." Further conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Martinez, fully geared up for a dive and checking her underwater communication device. "Morning, gentlemen," she greeted them. "Jack, if you're interested in observing the operation, we have a live feed from the divers' cameras in the control room. Better than coffee for waking you up, seeing Spanish treasure emerge from 3 centuries of slumber." Jack found himself genuinely curious. "I'd like that if I'm not in the way." "Not at all. In fact, Alexa mentioned you might help us review security protocols for artifact transfer from ship to shore. Seeing the recovery process firsthand would give you better context." The control room was a marvel of technology. Multiple screens displayed underwater footage from various angles, while technicians monitored oxygen levels, diver biometrics, and environmental conditions. A large central screen showed what appeared to be a real-time 3D mapping of the wreck site, with highlighted areas indicating sections already explored and those targeted for the current dive. Jack watched, fascinated, as divers carefully removed sediment from what had once been a wooden cabinet. The wood had long since deteriorated into a fragile outline, but the contents, metal boxes, ceramic containers, and what appeared to be book bindings, remained relatively intact within the silt that had protected them from the ocean's ravages. "That's the officer's escritoire, a writing desk and document storage cabinet," explained Dr. Wei Chen, who was narrating the footage for the control room team. Based on similar vessels of the period, it would have contained the ship's official papers, navigational documents, and possibly personal correspondence. The careful extraction continued for over an hour, with each item being placed in specialized containers for the ascent to the surface. Jack found himself holding his breath during particularly delicate moments, impressed by the diver's patience and precision. "They're beginning the ascent with the first recovery containers," announced a technician, checking a depth gauge. "ETA to surface. 12 minutes with decompression stops." As if on cue, Alexa entered the control room. "Good morning, Jack. I see Sophia has already recruited you to our observation team." "It's incredible," Jack admitted. "I had no idea underwater archaeology was so methodical. It's a far cry from the treasure hunting days of old, when sites were essentially looted with little regard for context or preservation." Alexa agreed. "Speaking of preservation, Emily will be joining Professor Blackwood shortly to begin work on the documents we've already recovered. Would you like to observe that process as well?" "I'd like that," Jack nodded. "But first, Dr. Martinez mentioned something about security protocols for artifact transfer." "Yes, that's actually quite timely," Alexa replied. "We're planning the first shore transfer of cataloged artifacts tomorrow. Darius has outlined a standard procedure, but I'd value your perspective given your security background." The morning passed quickly as Jack reviewed the security plans with Darius, suggesting several modifications based on his experience. The process was thorough. Chain of custody documentation, tamper-evident containers, GPS tracking, and armed escort from ship to secure storage facility. Jack was impressed by the professionalism, but identified several potential vulnerabilities in the handoff points. These are excellent observations, Darius acknowledged as they finalized the revised protocols, particularly regarding the dual authentication procedure at transfer points. It's a significant improvement over our current system. Just applying standard practices from high-value cargo handling, Jack shrugged, though he was pleased by the professional validation. By midday, Jack made his way to the navigation lab where Emily had been working with Professor Blackwood. The lab was a curious blend of cutting-edge technology and historical materials. Computer workstations alongside reproductions of antique charts and navigational instruments. He found Emily bent over a large table where several document fragments had been carefully arranged under protective, transparent covers. She was making notations on a tablet while Blackwood observed with evident approval. "Dad," she greeted him enthusiastically. "We've been testing my cipher theory and it's working. Look at this sequence here." She launched into an explanation that quickly exceeded Jack's mathematical knowledge, pointing out patterns and strings of numbers that apparently corresponded to specific locations when translated through her decoding method. "What Emily has discovered," Blackwood interjected, taking pity on Jack's confused expression, "is that the captain was using a mathematical substitution cipher to record the planned rendezvous points with the San Miguel. It's elegantly simple once you see the pattern, but remarkably effective at obscuring the information from casual observation. Which means we can potentially map their intended course before the hurricane struck," Emily added. "And when we combine that with what we know about the storm's path, we can narrow down the search area for the San Miguel significantly," Blackwood finished. "Your daughter's insight may have just saved us weeks of searching, Mr. Foster." Jack felt a surge of pride. "She's always been good at seeing patterns." "It's more than that," Blackwood countered. "It's a particular type of mathematical intuition combined with historical context awareness. Quite remarkable in someone so young." Emily beamed at the praise but quickly returned to her work, already absorbed in the next sequence of encoded coordinates. "We're making progress faster than anticipated," Blackwood told Jack quietly. "At this rate, we may have a preliminary search area identified within days rather than weeks." "That's good news, isn't it?" Jack asked, remembering Alexa's comments about investor pressure. "Very good news indeed," Blackwood confirmed. It would strengthen Alexa's position considerably with the board. Their conversation was interrupted by an excited call from the control room over the ship's communication system. "Navigation lab. We have recovered intact logbooks from the captain's quarters. Repeat, intact logbooks. Currently being transferred to initial conservation." Blackwood's eyes lit up. "That could be the final piece we need." He turned to Emily. "Ready to test your cipher theory against fresh material?" "Absolutely," she looked to Jack. "Is that okay, Dad?" "Go for it, sunshine," he smiled. "I'll catch up with you at dinner." As Emily and Blackwood hurried to the conservation lab, Jack found himself with an unexpected free moment. On impulse, he decided to explore more of the ship, curious about the operation beyond what he'd been directly shown. The Horizon Seeker proved to be even more impressive upon further inspection. Beyond the research areas and living quarters, he discovered specialized workshops for equipment maintenance, a small medical facility staffed by a doctor and nurse, and even a modest gym where off-duty crew members could maintain their fitness. What caught his attention, however, was a secured door on the lower deck marked "Private Authorized Personnel Only." Unlike other restricted areas, this one featured both a keycard reader and a numeric keypad, double security that seemed excessive compared to the rest of the ship's relatively open layout. As Jack paused, considering the anomaly, a voice spoke from behind him. "Curious about our special collections area, Mr. Foster?" He turned to find Dr. Harmon, the British historian, observing him with a mild expression that nevertheless contained a hint of wariness. "Just exploring the ship," Jack explained. "I wasn't planning to enter." "Of course not," Harmon smiled, though his eyes remained watchful. "That area contains our most valuable recovered artifacts, items with significant historical or monetary value that require extra security measures. I'd be happy to show you inside sometime, with proper authorization from Ms. Rains." "No need," Jack said easily. "I respect security protocols. I was just getting familiar with the layout." Harmon seemed to relax slightly. "Very commendable. Security is paramount in our line of work, as I'm sure you appreciate. Some of the items we recover are worth millions on the legitimate market, and significantly more on the black market for antiquities." "I can imagine," Jack nodded. "Actually, I've been working with Darius on reviewing transfer protocols for tomorrow's shore delivery. Ah, yes. The first batch going to our secure facility in Miami. Harmon checked his watch. Speaking of which, I believe Ms. Raines was looking for you. Something about the final sign-off on those protocols. Jack thanked him and headed back toward the upper deck, but not before noting that Harmon remained by the secured door, watching him until he rounded the corner. The interaction left him with a vague sense of unease. Nothing he could pinpoint precisely, but enough to file away for future consideration. When he reached the main deck, he found it buzzing with activity. The recovery operation was in full swing, with artifacts being carefully transferred from the water to specialized containers. Among the items emerging was what appeared to be a small chest, heavily encrusted but still intact, its brass fittings visible beneath centuries of marine growth. "That's one of the officer's personal chests," Alexa explained, appearing at his side. "Based on its location and the embellishments, we believe it belonged to the ship's navigator, which makes it particularly valuable for our purposes." "Hoping for more navigational records?" Jack asked. "Yes, but also potentially personal logs or correspondence that might mention the San Miguel. Relationships between officers on companion ships were often close. They may have exchanged letters at the last port before the storm." They watched as the chest was carefully placed in a preservation tank where it would undergo initial stabilization before more detailed conservation efforts. "Darius mentioned you were looking for me," Jack said. "Something about the transfer protocols?" "Yes, I've reviewed your suggestions. They're excellent, particularly the randomized timing intervals for the handoff points. The board has approved the additional security measures despite the increased cost." She hesitated, then added, "That intervention with the lockbox failsafe was especially insightful. May I ask where you learned that technique?" Jack considered how to answer. The truth was, he'd learned it during a specialized Army training course for high-value asset protection, not standard knowledge for a warehouse worker or night security guard. "I read a lot," he said finally. "Security journals, case studies of heists, and how they might have been prevented. It's a hobby." Alexa studied him for a moment, her expression suggesting she didn't entirely believe the explanation, but had decided not to press the matter. "Well, your hobby has significantly improved our protocols. The first transfer is scheduled for 0900 tomorrow. Darius would appreciate your assistance with the final preparations this evening, if you're willing." "Of course," Jack agreed, curious about what else the day's recovery might yield, and what Emily might discover in the newly recovered logbooks. As the afternoon progressed, Jack found himself drawn further into the operation's details. What had initially seemed like a straightforward treasure hunt was revealing itself to be a complex intersection of archaeology, history, security, and cutting-edge technology. The professionals around him moved with purpose and expertise, their passion for the work evident in every careful handling of artifacts and enthusiastic discussion of findings. And somewhere in the midst of it all, his daughter was flourishing, her mathematical gift recognized and valued by world-class experts who spoke to her as a peer rather than a child. Whatever risks this adventure might entail, Jack couldn't deny that it had already opened doors for Emily that he never could have unlocked on his own. As the sun began to set, casting long, golden reflections across the water, Jack leaned against the ship's railing and allowed himself a rare moment of optimism. Perhaps this unexpected detour in their lives would lead somewhere better than the grinding struggle that had defined their existence for so long. Little did he know that beneath the professional operation and scholarly excitement lay currents of conflict and danger that would soon draw him and Emily into depths far more treacherous than the shipwreck below. Dawn broke over the horizon seeker with a spectacular array of colors painting the eastern sky. Jack had risen early again, his body still operating on the clock of a man accustomed to multiple jobs and minimal sleep. He found the deck already busy with preparations for the day's first dive and the scheduled artifact transfer to the mainland. "Morning, Jack," Darius greeted him, clipboard in hand as he supervised the loading of specialized transport containers. "Sleep well?" "Better than expected," Jack admitted. The gentle rocking of the ship had proven surprisingly conducive to rest. Emily's still out cold. I think all the excitement finally caught up with her. Blackwood mentioned she was working with him until almost midnight, said she was making remarkable progress with the cipher and the newly recovered logbooks. Darius checked something off his list. "The kid's got an impressive work ethic. Takes after her old man, I suspect." Jack smiled at the compliment, but was somewhat concerned about Emily pushing herself too hard. "I'll make sure she paces herself today. What's the schedule for the transfer?" "Final checks at 800, departure at 900. The secure transport will take the cataloged artifacts to our facility in Miami. I've incorporated all your suggested modifications to the protocol. Darius lowered his voice slightly. Alexa was particularly impressed with your insight about rotating the security escort personnel. Just common sense, Jack shrugged. The same people handling the same high-value transfers creates a predictable pattern that's easier to compromise. Common sense isn't as common as the name suggests, Darius replied with a knowing look, especially in security matters. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the morning's first dive team, led by James Kelly. The team was gearing up with focused efficiency, checking equipment and reviewing underwater maps of the target area. Today we're focusing on the officers' quarters adjacent to the captain's cabin, Kelly explained when Jack inquired about their objectives. Based on the ship's layout, we believe that's where the navigator's personal effects would have been stored. Looking for more navigation records for the San Miguel? Exactly. The documents Emily and Professor Blackwood analyzed yesterday have narrowed our search area considerably, but additional confirmation would help us pinpoint the location more precisely. Kelly adjusted his diving mask. The more concrete evidence we have, the stronger Alexa's position with the investors. There it was again, the underlying tension with the investors that Jack had noticed previously. He was beginning to piece together a more complex picture of Atlantic Exploration's internal dynamics than what appeared on the surface. These investors, Jack ventured carefully, they seem to be pushing hard for results. Kelly paused in his preparations, glancing around before responding in a lowered voice. Between us, they're a relatively new funding group that came in about 6 months ago. Deep pockets, but less patience with the academic approach than our previous backers. He checked his oxygen gauge. Alexa's been walking a tightrope between their commercial interests and proper archaeological methods. Before Jack could inquire further, Kelly was called away to finalize the dive plan with his team. The brief exchange, however, added another piece to the puzzle Jack was mentally assembling. As the morning progressed, Jack assisted with the final security preparations for the artifact transfer. The items being transported included several of the silver coins, small artifacts that had already been cataloged and stabilized, and comprehensive documentation of the wreck site. The most valuable pieces, including the astrolabe and navigator's chest, would remain on board for further study and conservation. The first transfer is always somewhat ceremonial, Alexa explained as she joined him in reviewing the manifest. Proof of discovery for the investors and regulatory authorities. The truly significant historical items will be transferred later, under even more stringent security. Jack nodded, noting the professional detail in the documentation. Each artifact had been photographed, measured, given a unique identification code, and sealed in specialized containers designed to maintain appropriate environmental conditions during transport. Everything looks in order, he confirmed. Darius has implemented all the recommended security measures. The transfer team knows the protocols? They've been thoroughly briefed, Alexa assured him. In fact, I'd like you to observe the handoff process from our side. Your security background gives you a useful perspective that might identify any remaining vulnerabilities. As Jack accompanied Alexa to the main deck where the transfer preparations were finalizing, he spotted Emily emerging from below, looking refreshed despite her late night. She was deep in conversation with Professor Blackwood, both gesturing animatedly over something displayed on a tablet. "Morning, sunshine," Jack called. "You were up late." Emily's face lit up when she saw him. "Dad, we had a breakthrough last night with the navigator's personal journal. The cipher works across multiple documents, which confirms it was a standardized code used by the Spanish Navy at that time. And it's yielded precise coordinates for several potential locations of the San Miguel," Blackwood added, his typical reserve replaced by evident excitement. "We've narrowed the search area from several square miles to 3 specific locations." Alexa's expression brightened considerably at this news. "That's excellent progress. I'll inform the survey team immediately so they can begin scanning those areas." "Actually," Emily interjected, "there's something else. The journal mentioned a specific cargo on the San Miguel that wasn't on any official manifest, a collection of instrumentos filosóficos commissioned by the Spanish Royal Academy." "Philosophical instruments," Blackwood translated, a term often used for scientific and mathematical devices of the period, including prototypes of new navigational tools that were being transported to Spain for evaluation, Emily continued. "According to the journal, they were stored in specialized cases designed by the royal mathematician himself." Jack recognized the significance immediately. This wasn't just about gold and silver anymore. It was about historically significant scientific artifacts that could be priceless from both academic and monetary perspectives. This changes our approach, Alexa said thoughtfully. If these instruments exist and are intact, they would be of immense historical value, far beyond the precious metals we expected to find. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the transport vessel, a sleek, reinforced boat with minimal markings but obvious security features. Two armed guards in plain clothes but with the unmistakable bearing of professionals stood at attention as the craft docked alongside the Horizon Seeker. Time for the transfer, Alexa noted. Emily, would you continue working with Professor Blackwood on refining those coordinates? Jack, if you'll accompany me? The artifact transfer proceeded with precise efficiency. Jack observed the process with a professional eye, noting with approval the multiple verification steps, the careful handling of the sealed containers, and the discreet but comprehensive security measures. The transport team operated with minimal conversation, using pre-arranged verification codes in biometric confirmation for each handoff point. As the transport vessel pulled away from the Horizon Seeker, Jack found himself standing next to Dr. Harmon, who had been observing the process with keen interest. Impressive security, the historian commented. One might think we were transferring crown jewels rather than a few silver coins and documentation. Standard procedure for high-value items, Jack replied neutrally. Indeed, though the truly valuable items remain on board. Harmon's gaze followed the departing boat. The Special Collections Room currently holds artifacts worth more than everything on that transport combined. Jack recalled the secured door he'd noted yesterday and Harmon's careful monitoring of his interest in it. I imagine that room has even more stringent security. Multiple layers, Harmon confirmed. Access limited to Alexa, myself, and Dr. Martinez. Even Professor Blackwood requires an escort. He studied Jack with a calculating expression. Your security background must be quite extensive, given how quickly Alexa has integrated you into our protocols. The comment carried a subtle probe that Jack chose to sidestep. Just practical experience from various jobs over the years. Harmon seemed unconvinced but didn't press further. Well, I should check on the conservation progress for the navigator's chest. The initial cleaning has revealed some intriguing engravings that might correlate with Emily's cipher discoveries. As Harmon departed, Jack felt that same vague unease he'd experienced during their previous interaction. There was something about the historian that didn't quite align with the collegial atmosphere among the rest of the team. A guardedness that went beyond professional caution. Jack's reflections were interrupted by a sudden commotion from the dive team's staging area. James Kelly was speaking urgently into a communication device while technicians monitored readings with worried expressions. What's happening? Jack asked, approaching the group. We've lost contact with two divers in the eastern section of the wreck, one of the technicians explained, eyes fixed on a display showing vital signs and position data. Their locator beacons are still active, but they're not responding to communications. Kelly was already organizing an emergency response team, his movements efficient, but with an underlying tension that conveyed the seriousness of the situation. Possible equipment failure or underwater obstruction. We're sending in the rescue team now. The next 30 minutes were a study in professional crisis management. The backup dive team deployed with emergency equipment, while the surface crew maintained constant monitoring of vital signs and environmental conditions. Jack found himself naturally falling into a support role, helping coordinate communication between various stations and ensuring the rescue equipment was ready for immediate deployment. When the first bubbles appeared, indicating ascending divers, a palpable wave of relief spread across the deck. The rescue team surfaced with both missing divers, shaken but unharmed. What happened down there? Kelly demanded once the divers had been helped aboard and their equipment removed. Section collapse, reported one of the divers, a woman named Rodriguez who Jack had met briefly the previous day. We were examining the bulkhead adjacent to the navigator's quarters when the timbers shifted unexpectedly. Created a silt cloud that disoriented us and knocked out our primary comms. The wreck is deteriorating faster than we anticipated, added her diving partner, a Norwegian specialist named Hansen. But before the collapse, we found something, a small sealed container wedged between support beams. We managed to secure it before the structure shifted. The object in question was brought forward, a lead-sealed box approximately the size of a hardcover book, its surface encrusted with centuries of marine growth, but its integrity remarkably preserved. The lead sealing protected it from seawater degradation. Doctor, Martinez observed as she examined the find. Similar to how the astrolabe was preserved, this needs immediate conservation treatment. The box was carefully transferred to the conservation lab, where specialized equipment would allow for its opening under controlled conditions to prevent damage to the contents. Jack followed the team, curious about what might be inside and concerned about the structural collapse mentioned by the divers. In the lab, Emily and Professor Blackwood had joined the conservation team. Their work on the cipher temporarily paused given the potential significance of the new find. Emily's eyes were wide with excitement as Dr. Lopez prepared specialized tools for the delicate process of opening the sealed container. The lead seal appears to bear an official mark, Dr. Martinez noted as she examined the box under magnification, possibly the seal of the Spanish Royal Navy or the Casa de Contratación, which regulated all colonial trade. The process of opening the box proceeded with excruciating slowness. First, the exterior was carefully cleaned to reveal more of the original surface. Then a series of X-ray and ultrasound scans were performed to determine the condition of the contents without disturbing the seal. There appears to be paper or parchment inside, Dr. Lopez announced, studying the scan results. Multiple sheets, relatively well preserved due to the airtight seal. Finally, after nearly an hour of preparation, the conservation team was ready to open the box. A specialized cutting tool was used to precisely separate the lead seal along its original seam, minimizing damage to both the container and its contents. As the lid was carefully lifted, revealing its contents for the first time in over 3 centuries, a hush fell over the lab. Inside lay several folded parchments, their edges discolored but the text still clearly visible, alongside what appeared to be a small leather pouch. Martinez, wearing conservation gloves, gently unfolded the top document. "It's a letter," she announced, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Dated July 18, 1715, just days before the hurricane struck the fleet. Professor Blackwood leaned forward, his eyes scanning the faded Spanish text. It's addressed to Don Carlos de Vega y Morales, chief navigator of the San Miguel, from his counterpart on the Santa Cruz. Emily moved closer, her mathematical focus temporarily overshadowed by the human drama unfolding in the centuries-old correspondence. What does it say? As Blackwood translated, a personal narrative emerged from across the centuries, one navigator writing to another about their shared journey, the storms they had already weathered, and their hopes for safe arrival in Spain. But it was the final paragraph that caused a visible reaction among the assembled experts. "I return to you the golden astrolabe and accompanying charts entrusted to me for verification," Blackwood read, his voice gaining intensity. "The calculations confirm your hypothesis regarding the new navigational method. This discovery will surely revolutionize maritime navigation and bring great honor to His Majesty's Navy. I have sealed them in lead as you suggested to protect them on the final leg of our journey." He looked up, his eyes bright with academic excitement. This confirms the San Miguel was carrying significant navigational innovations, possibly early experiments with lunar distance measurements for determining longitude, a problem that wouldn't be officially solved until decades later. "But the letter mentions returning items to the navigator on the San Miguel," Jack pointed out. "Shouldn't those items be with this letter?" Dr. Lopez carefully opened the small leather pouch that had accompanied the documents. Inside was a small golden disc, intricately engraved with astronomical markings and fitted with precision measurement scales. "A pocket-sized astrolabe," Dr. Martinez breathed. "Gold to prevent corrosion at sea, and of a design I've never encountered in any museum collection." "It's beautiful," Emily whispered, leaning closer without touching. "Look at the precision of those degree markings. They're much finer than on the brass astrolabe we saw yesterday." "This is just a prototype," Professor Blackwood said, studying the instrument with reverent attention. "According to the letter, the complete set of navigational innovations would be on the San Miguel. If we can locate that wreck, we could potentially find one of the missing links in the development of modern navigation," Alexa finished, having joined them during the examination. "An archaeological find of immense significance." Jack watched as Emily's face lit with understanding of the historical importance. This wasn't just about treasure anymore. It was about recovering lost knowledge, innovations that had disappeared beneath the waves before they could change the course of maritime history. The discovery energized the entire team. With renewed purpose, Emily and Professor Blackwood returned to their analysis of the coordinates, now with additional confirmation of the San Miguel's probable location based on the dated letter and references to the ship's relative positions. By late afternoon, they had identified a primary search area approximately 2 nautical miles northeast of the Santa Cruz wreck site. The ship's sonar and magnetometer equipment was immediately repositioned to begin scanning this location. Based on the prevailing currents during the 1715 hurricane and the navigational data Emily decoded, this represents our highest probability target, Blackwood explained during a briefing for the entire research team. The seafloor in this area has several reef formations that could have caught and preserved portions of a sinking vessel. We'll deploy remote scanning equipment immediately, Alexa decided. If initial results are promising, we'll schedule a preliminary dive for first light tomorrow. The atmosphere aboard the Horizon Seeker had shifted noticeably, Jack observed. A new intensity and focus energizing the crew. The potential discovery of the San Miguel with its innovative navigational instruments had transformed their mission from valuable to historically significant. Even Dr. Harmon, typically reserved, displayed unusual animation as he discussed the possible implications with his colleagues. As evening approached, Jack sought out Emily, concerned that she might be overextending herself in the excitement of the hunt. He found her in the navigation lab, still working alongside Professor Blackwood despite the long hours. "Time for a break, Sunshine," he suggested gently. "You've been at this all day." To his surprise, Emily didn't protest. "Actually, I am pretty tired," she admitted, rubbing her eyes. "But it's so exciting, Dad. We're really close to finding the second ship. I can feel it." "Emily's contributions have been invaluable," Blackwood told Jack. His initial skepticism about working with a 12-year-old completely vanished. Her identification of the mathematical pattern in the coordinate ciphers saved us days, possibly weeks of analysis. "Still, she needs rest," Jack insisted. "Even mathematical geniuses need sleep." "Of course," Blackwood agreed. "We've made excellent progress. The scanning equipment will work through the night, and we'll have preliminary results by morning." As Jack and Emily made their way to the dining area for dinner, the ship's intercom system crackled to life with an announcement from the bridge. "Attention all personnel. Weather advisory in effect. Tropical depression forming south of our position, expected to develop into a storm system within 48 hours. All departments implement storm preparation protocols." Repeat, storm preparation protocols now in effect? Jack felt Emily tense beside him. "A storm? Will it be dangerous?" "Probably just precautionary," he reassured her, though he immediately thought of the structural collapse the dive team had experienced earlier. These ships are designed to handle rough weather. Dinner that evening was more subdued than previous meals, with many crew members engaged in storm preparations or monitoring the developing weather system. Alexa joined Jack and Emily briefly, her expression showing signs of strain despite her composed demeanor. "The storm shouldn't affect our operations significantly," she assured them. "It's tracking to pass west of our position, though we'll experience some increased wave activity and wind." "What about the divers?" as Jack asked. "After today's incident with the structural collapse, we've suspended diving operations at the Santa Cruz site until structural engineers can assess the stability," Alexa confirmed. "However, the preliminary scan of the potential San Miguel location will continue, using remotely operated vehicles rather than divers." She hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know. The investors are sending representatives to join us tomorrow morning. The discovery of the letter and gold astrolabe has accelerated their interest in our progress." Jack recalled the tense interaction with the investors at the Georgia airfield. "Will that complicate things?" "Potentially," Alexa admitted. "They're pushing for rapid recovery of high-value items, while our team prioritizes proper documentation and preservation. It's a common tension in privately funded archaeological work, but the stakes are particularly high with the navigational instruments mentioned in the letter." After Alexa departed to oversee storm preparations, Jack noticed Emily stifling a yawn despite her attempts to appear alert. "Bedtime," he declared firmly. "Tomorrow will be busy enough without you being exhausted." Back in their cabin, Emily fell asleep almost immediately, the day's excitement finally giving way to fatigue. Jack, however, found himself restless. The combination of the impending storm, the investors' imminent arrival, and the accelerating pace of discoveries created a sense of mounting pressure that left him uneasy. On impulse, he decided to take a walk around the ship, ostensibly to check on storm preparations, but actually to clear his head and process the day's developments. The deck was quiet but busy, with crew members securing equipment and checking moorings in preparation for increased wave action. As he rounded the stern section, Jack noticed a figure standing alone at the railing. Doctor? Harmon apparently deep in thought as he gazed out at the darkening sea. Evening, Doctor, Jack greeted him, not wanting to startle the man. Harmon turned, his expression momentarily unguarded, revealing what appeared to be profound concern before his features smoothed into their usual composed state. Ah, Mr. Foster. Couldn't sleep? Just stretching my legs, Jack replied, joining him at the railing. Quite a day of discoveries. Indeed, Harmon agreed. The golden astrolabe alone is a find of tremendous significance. But what might be waiting on the San Miguel? He trailed off, his gaze returning to the horizon where heat lightning occasionally illuminated distant cloud formations. You seem troubled by the prospect, Jack observed. Harmon was silent for a long moment before responding. History is a fragile thing, Mr. Foster. Artifacts like these, they don't merely represent wealth or academic interest. They represent knowledge, innovations, paths not taken. He turned to face Jack directly. In the wrong hands, such discoveries can be misused. The investors, you mean? Another silence then. I've worked in this field for 4 decades, Mr. Foster. I've seen priceless historical artifacts disappear into private collections, never to be studied or shared with the world. Others damaged by hasty recovery methods prioritizing speed over preservation. His voice lowered. This discovery, particularly the navigational innovations, they belong to humanity's shared heritage, not locked in some billionaire's private display case. The vehemence in his tone surprised Jack. Alexa seems committed to proper archaeological methods, he offered. Alexa walks a dangerous line, Harmon replied. The new investment group that took controlling interest in Atlantic exploration 6 months ago, they have different priorities than our previous academic backers. They see artifacts as commodities, not knowledge. This aligned with what Jack had gleaned from Kelly earlier. And tomorrow they'll be here in person. Yes, Harmon's expression darkened. Led by a man named Victor Crane, a collector with a reputation for acquiring rare items regardless of legal or ethical constraints. Before Jack could inquire further, the ship's warning system emitted a low-frequency tone, followed by an announcement. Attention all personnel, updated weather advisory. Storm system intensifying and tracking more directly toward our position. Estimated arrival of outer bands, MRO 600 hours. All departments escalate to level 2 storm protocols immediately. That's concerning, Harmon frowned. Storms in these waters can intensify rapidly. Will we need to return to shore, Jack asked, thinking of Emily's safety. Unlikely at this stage, but we'll suspend all diving operations. Harmon glanced toward the horizon again. Unfortunately, I doubt that will deter our visitors tomorrow. Victor Crane is not a man easily discouraged when valuable artifacts are involved. As if punctuating his statement, a particularly vivid flash of lightning illuminated the distant storm front, followed several seconds later by a low rumble of thunder. The air had taken on that distinctive heaviness that precedes significant weather, a pressure that seemed, to Jack, metaphorical as well as meteorological. I should check on Emily, he said, suddenly wanting to be near his daughter amid the gathering storm. Good night, Doctor. Mr. Foster, Harmon called as Jack turned to leave. You strike me as a man who values more than just financial reward. Keep a close eye on your daughter's work over the coming days, and be careful whom you trust. With that cryptic warning, the historian turned back to his contemplation of the approaching weather, leaving Jack with a growing sense that the waters they were navigating, both literal and figurative, were becoming increasingly treacherous. Back in their cabin, Jack found Emily still sleeping peacefully, untroubled by the ship's preparations or the distant thunder. He stood watching her for a moment, struck by how quickly she had adapted to this extraordinary situation. Working alongside world-class experts, making meaningful contributions to a historical discovery, thriving in an environment that challenged her brilliant mind. Whatever complications lay ahead with investors, storms, or the mysterious tensions aboard the Horizon Seeker, Jack resolved to ensure that this adventure remained a positive turning point in Emily's life. She deserved this opportunity to shine, to have her exceptional abilities recognized and valued. As he finally prepared for sleep, Jack's last thoughts were of Harmon's warning. The golden astrolabe they discovered today was just a prototype, a hint of the potentially revolutionary navigational instruments that might lie with the San Miguel. Such discoveries could indeed attract dangerous attention, particularly in the isolated environment of a ship at sea. Tomorrow would bring not only the investors, but also, perhaps, the discovery of the second shipwreck. Jack had the distinct feeling that the relatively smooth sailing they'd experienced so far was about to encounter significantly rougher waters, in more ways than one. Jack woke to the sound of a helicopter approaching. Checking his watch, 7:47 a.m., he frowned. The investors were arriving earlier than expected, and judging by the ship's motion, sea conditions were already deteriorating. Emily stirred in her bed. "What's happening?" "Helicopter," Jack explained, moving to the porthole. The sky was an ominous gray-green, the sea noticeably rougher than before. "Looks like our visitors are arriving ahead of the storm." By the time they reached the main deck, the helicopter was completing its landing. It was larger than the one that had brought them to the Horizon Seeker, a luxury model with corporate markings. 4 figures emerged, led by a tall man in his 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Victor," Alexa greeted him with professional courtesy but little warmth. "We weren't expecting you until later. The storm accelerated our timeline," the man replied with a slight accent. "Weather reports suggest a narrow window before conditions become prohibitive for flying." His gaze finally settled on Jack and Emily. "And these must be your consultants." "Yes," Alexa confirmed. "Jack Foster and his daughter Emily. Jack has been assisting with our security protocols, and Emily has made remarkable progress with deciphering the navigational codes." "Jack, Emily, this is Victor Crane, chairman of Poseidon Venture Capital and our primary investor." Crane shook Jack's hand. "Quite the career change from warehouse work and night security, Mr. Foster." "I go where the opportunities are," Jack replied evenly. Crane turned to Emily and the young mathematician. "I understand you've made quite an impression on Professor Blackwood. Not an easy feat." "The cipher was interesting," Emily replied. "Once I recognized the mathematical pattern, the rest followed logically." "I'd like a full briefing on yesterday's discoveries immediately," Crane requested, "particularly the golden astrolabe and the potential location of the San Miguel." The meeting began with a comprehensive presentation of the previous day's discoveries, focusing on the sealed lead box, the letter between navigators, and the golden prototype astrolabe. When the discussion turned to the potentially revolutionary navigational instruments, Crane's interest visibly sharpened. "These innovations," he interrupted, "they would have predated Harrison's chronometer by decades? If they functioned as described in the correspondence..." "Yes," Blackwood confirmed. "The Spanish Royal Academy was experimenting with lunar distance calculations for determining longitude at sea, a problem that wasn't officially solved until much later." "And these instruments would be on the San Miguel," Crane stated. "According to the letter, yes," Alexa replied. "The complete set of innovations would have been in the navigator's possession." "What's the status of the search for the second wreck?" Crane asked. "We deployed remote scanning equipment last night," Alexa explained, showing a sonar image. "Initial results are promising. There's a distinct debris field here, with what appears to be a partially intact hull section embedded in a reef formation. How soon can we confirm and begin recovery operations?" "That's complicated by the approaching storm," Dr. Martinez interjected. "Wave heights are already increasing, and visibility underwater will be severely compromised within hours." "I'm aware of the meteorological situation," Crane replied impatiently. "My question concerns your operational capabilities under these conditions." "We can deploy ROVs for closer inspection today," Alexa offered as a compromise. "If conditions permit, and we confirm it's the San Miguel, we could begin limited recovery operations in specific areas." "The navigational instruments would be the priority," Crane stated definitively, "along with proper documentation of the wreck site and contextual positioning of artifacts," Dr. Martinez added firmly. The ROVs were deployed despite the increasingly rough sea conditions. 2 vehicles descended, one for visual documentation and another for detailed inspection and sample collection. "Approaching the coordinates now," the lead technician announced. "Sonar is showing significant structure consistent with shipwreck debris." When the first visual confirmation appeared, the unmistakable curve of a wooden hull partially embedded in coral, excitement spread through the group. "That's definitely a shipwreck," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "Period in construction consistent with an early 18th century Spanish vessel." "The dimensions match what we know of the San Miguel," Professor Blackwood observed. "She was slightly smaller than the Santa Cruz, approximately 150 feet in length." "Can we confirm identity?" Crane asked intently. "Check the stern carvings," Harmon suggested. Spanish vessels of this class typically had the ship's name incorporated into decorative elements. The ROV operators maneuvered around a coral formation that partially obscured the remnants of the ship's stern. A carved wooden panel came into view, severely degraded but still showing remnants of lettering. "There," Harmon pointed. "That's MI and what appears to be gay fragments of Miguel." "We found it," Emily whispered, wide-eyed. "The San Miguel," Alexa confirmed. "After 3 centuries." The ROVs examined the navigator's quarters, where they discovered what appeared to be a metal container similar to the navigator's chest, recovered from the Santa Cruz, but larger and with more elaborate fittings. "That could be it, Doctor," Martinez said. "A specialized case for the navigational instruments mentioned in the letter." "Can the ROV extract it?" Crane asked immediately. "Not safely," Martinez replied. "It's partially trapped under structural elements." "We need divers," Kelly stated. "Experienced recovery specialists who can carefully free it without causing further structural collapse." "In these conditions," Alexa frowned, "it's already borderline unsafe for diving operations." "The window is closing quickly," Kelly acknowledged, "but we have maybe a 2 to 3 hour operational window before it becomes completely untenable." After consideration, Alexa authorized a specialized recovery dive team while the ship's communications system announced deteriorating weather conditions. "All personnel be advised. Storm conditions now at Category 1, hurricane strength. Secure all stations and prepare for possible emergency maneuvers." As preparations for the dive began, Jack received a message from Darius. "Security meeting, my office now. Bring Emily." In Darius's office, the security chief explained, "I'm implementing elevated security protocols during Crane's visit. There are concerns about the security of high-value artifacts, particularly the navigational instruments." "Concerns about theft?" Jack asked bluntly. "Let's call it concerns about competing priorities," Darius replied diplomatically. "Alexa has authorized additional security measures for the special collections room and any new recoveries." He turned to Emily. "You've become integral to this operation. I need you to document everything you've discovered about the cipher system and provide copies to both Alexa and me for secure storage." "I can put together my notes in the decoding process," Emily agreed. "One more thing," Darius added quietly. "Be careful what you discuss around Crane's security chief and Samantha Wells. She has an interesting background that goes beyond standard corporate security." As Jack and Emily left to complete their tasks, the ship's motion became increasingly violent. While Emily worked in the navigation lab documenting her cipher discoveries, Jack observed the dive team's preparation. The 3 selected divers were clearly experienced professionals, reviewing custom recovery equipment designed for delicate artifact extraction in difficult conditions. The dive launched with professional efficiency despite the challenging conditions. In the monitoring room, tension mounted as the divers worked to extract the metal case from beneath collapsed timbers. Suddenly, warning systems activated, sharp tones accompanied by flashing indicators. "Significant wave pattern change detected," a technician announced urgently. "Possible underwater surge approaching the dive site. Wave height increasing to 50 feet. "Get them out of there," Alexa ordered immediately. "Abort the extraction." "They've almost completed securing the case," the dive coordinator countered. 3 minutes to complete the operation. "The storm surge could hit at any moment," the meteorological officer warned. "Let them finish," Crane interjected forcefully. "It's not worth risking lives," Alexa stated firmly. Jack, drawing on his military experience, spoke up clearly. "Standard emergency protocol is to prioritize personnel safety over mission objectives. Order the abort now." The abort command was transmitted, and the divers quickly secured their positions, attached safety lines to the partially freed case, and began emergency ascent. They had barely cleared the wreck site when the underwater cameras captured a cloud of silt and sudden water movement, indicating the arrival of the storm surge. After the divers were safely recovered, Jack went to check on Emily. When he reached the navigation lab, he found it empty. Her tablet was on the workstation, but she was nowhere to be seen. A partially completed document was open on the screen, her detailed explanation of the cipher system, but the work appeared interrupted. Most concerning, her compass pendant, the one Alexa had given her after the math Olympiad, lay on the floor beside the workstation, as if dropped in haste. Emily would never willingly leave the pendant behind. Something was wrong. The ship pitched sharply as another wave struck. As Jack steadied himself, his gaze fell on a security camera in the corner. If Emily had left or been taken from the lab, there might be a record of what had happened. With growing urgency, Jack headed toward the security office. fighting against both the ship's violent motion and a rising sense of dread. Emily was missing in increasingly dangerous conditions aboard a ship filled with competing agendas and an approaching storm of potentially catastrophic proportions. The security office was in chaos when Jack arrived. Multiple warning systems flashed while crew members coordinated emergency responses. Darius was at the central console, issuing rapid directives. "Emily's missing," Jack announced. "She was in the navigation lab documenting her cipher work, but now she's gone." Her pendant was on the floor. Darius immediately brought up the security camera feeds, rewinding to show the navigation lab. The footage showed Emily working at the workstation, then Dr. Harmon appearing in the doorway. They conversed briefly before Harmon showed her something on his tablet that caused her to stand quickly. After gathering papers, she followed Harmon from the lab, leaving her tablet behind. Her compass pendant fell unnoticed. "Timestamp shows this was 28 minutes ago," Darius noted. "Let's follow their movement." They tracked Emily and Harmon through camera feeds as they moved toward the lower decks, specifically toward the special collections room. "What's Harmon doing taking her to the secured artifacts area during storm preparations?" Jack demanded. The feed from a corridor near the special collections room showed Samantha Wells, Crane's security chief, speaking into a communication device while two of Crane's men stood nearby. "This doesn't look right," Darius muttered, switching to the camera, covering the entrance to the special collections room. Harmon and Emily approached the door. Harmon used a key card and entered a code, then ushered Emily inside. The door closed behind them, and the camera feed abruptly cut to static. "Someone's disabled the interior cameras," Darius stated. He activated his communication device. "Security team to special collections, priority 1. Possible unauthorized access in progress." They moved quickly through the increasingly unstable ship. When they reached the corridor leading to the special collections room, they found Wells and her two associates still positioned near the entrance. "This area is temporarily restricted," she stated firmly. "Monsieur, Crane's orders." "This is my ship and my security jurisdiction," Darius countered. "Where is Emily Foster?" "The girl is assisting Dr. Harmon with urgent conservation measures necessitated by the storm conditions," Wells replied. "Mr. Crane authorized emergency protocols to secure the most valuable artifacts against potential damage. I want to see my daughter." Now, Jack's tone left no room for negotiation. The ship's emergency system activated again. "All personnel, be advised, storm conditions now at Category 1 hurricane strength. Secure all stations and prepare for potential emergency maneuvers." Darius received a message. "Security to Darius. We have a situation in the artifact conservation lab. Multiple items being removed without proper authorization." "I'll check the conservation lab," Darius decided quickly. "You stay here and get Emily. Use security override Alpha 7 Delta on the door panel if necessary." As Darius departed, Jack turned back to Wells. "Last chance to do this the easy way. I'm going in to get my daughter." When Wells refused to move, Jack took advantage of the ship's violent motion, using the momentum to neutralize the security personnel. After subduing Wells, he forced her to provide the security override code. Inside the special collections room, Emily stood with Dr. Harmon beside an examination table where several artifacts were arranged, including the golden astrolabe. "Dad!" Emily exclaimed. "What's happening?" "Emily, we need to go." "Now." "But Doctor, Harmon said these artifacts needed to be secured against the storm," Emily protested, confused. "That may be what he told you," Jack replied, "but something else is happening. Unauthorized removal of artifacts from the conservation lab, security overrides without proper clearance. This isn't standard storm protocol." Harmon's expression shifted to resignation. "You're right, of course. This isn't standard protocol because the situation isn't standard." He gestured toward one of the display cases containing the lead-sealed documents. "What we found goes beyond valuable artifacts. The navigational innovations documented here could have changed the course of maritime history. And now Crane wants them for his private collection," Jack surmised. "Worse," Harmon replied. "He intends to claim the intellectual property rights to the innovations through a complex legal maneuver involving historical salvage law and then license the underlying mathematical principles to his technology subsidiaries." "The mathematical principles are timeless," Harmon explained to Emily's incredulous question, "and certain fundamental approaches to navigation have applications far beyond their original maritime context, especially in modern satellite systems and autonomous navigation technology." "So why involve Emily in this?" Jack demanded. "Because she's the only one who fully understands the cipher system used in the navigation logs," Harmon replied. I needed her to help document the complete system before Crane's people could isolate and remove key components. Another violent impact rocked the ship as the storm intensified. The lights flickered ominously. We need to move, Jack decided. Emily, photograph everything, the documents, the astrolabe markings, whatever contains this mathematical system. We'll deal with the intellectual property issues after the storm. As Emily quickly photographed the artifacts with Harmon's guidance, Jack secured the room's entrance. Harmon explained that Crane had engineered the takeover of Atlantic exploration specifically to gain access to the research on the 1715 fleet, seeking the San Miguel's navigational innovations that had never been properly documented. The ship's communication system crackled with Alexa's voice. Attention all personnel. The storm has been upgraded to Category 2 hurricane status. We've sustained damage to the port stabilizers and are implementing emergency protocols. Just as they prepared to leave, the door opened to reveal Victor Crane with additional security personnel. Dr. Harmon, I'm disappointed but not surprised by your interference, Crane said calmly. Mr. Foster, involving yourself and your daughter in matters beyond your understanding seems unwise. We understand enough, Jack replied. The mathematical innovations in these documents aren't meant for private exploitation. Innovation always belongs to those with the vision to recognize its value, Crane stated. Now I'll need those photographs the girl has taken. The standoff was interrupted by a deafening impact that shuddered through the entire ship, followed by emergency alarms. The captain announced over the emergency system, "We have sustained significant structural damage. Prepare for potential evacuation procedures." As they moved toward the upper decks, they encountered crew members implementing emergency protocols. The ship's condition was deteriorating rapidly, with water seeping through seams in the corridor walls, indicating hull breaches. When they reached the bridge, Captain Rodriguez and his officers were fighting to maintain control of the vessel. Multiple hull breaches on the port side. We've lost one engine and primary stabilizers. The storm surge is pushing us toward the reef system, where the Santa Cruz wreck is located. What about my helicopter? Crane demanded. Your pilot reports sustained winds of 85 knots with gusts over 100, Rodriguez replied. Takeoff is suicide in these conditions. Darius pointed to a radar display showing a large vessel approximately 3 nautical miles away. Coast Guard cutter responding to our distress call. They have better heavy weather capabilities than our lifeboats. Can they reach us before we hit the reef? Alexa asked. Rodriguez's expression tightened. It's going to be close. We're implementing all possible measures to slow our drift. Emily had moved to one of the navigation displays. The current is moving at approximately 8 knots. Combined with the wind effect, will impact the reef in approximately 42 minutes at current drift rate. The Coast Guard estimates their arrival at our position in 35-40 minutes, Rodriguez confirmed, which leaves very little margin for error. Can we drop anchors to slow the drift? Jack suggested. Already deployed, but they're not holding well in these conditions, the first officer replied. The seafloor composition here is primarily sand and coral debris. Emily's expression suddenly changed. The San Miguel wreck. The ROV survey showed a significant section of the hull still intact and embedded in the reef. If we could somehow secure to that structure, it might provide enough stability to slow our drift. The experienced mariners exchanged thoughtful looks. It's not standard procedure, Rodriguez acknowledged, but in these conditions, we need every option. The dive team's recovery cables, Darius suggested. They're designed for heavy lifting. If we could get an ROV down to attach a cable to the San Miguel structure, James Kelly stepped forward. We have a specialized heavy weather ROV designed for emergency operations. With the right positioning, we could deploy it during a momentary lull between wave sets. Rodriguez made his decision quickly. Prepare the ROV for emergency deployment. The Marine Operations team worked with Kelly to prepare and deploy the specialized ROV during a brief relative calm. The operation was harrowing, but eventually successful. On the video feed, they watched as it located the San Miguel's hull section, embedded in the reef, and attached the anchor cable. We're getting resistance, Rodriguez reported, studying the navigational displays. Drift rate decreasing, now 3 knots. At the reduced drift rate, estimated time to reef impact is now 65 minutes, the navigation officer announced. Coast Guard ETA remains 35 minutes. The San Miguel is saving us, Harmon observed with wonder. 3 centuries later, it's serving its final mission. As the Coast Guard vessel's lights became visible through the driving rain, Jack held Emily close, overwhelmed by both fear and pride. In the 3 days since Alexa had appeared at their door, they had experienced an adventure beyond anything he could have imagined. From mathematical Olympiads to Spanish galleons, from treasure hunting to hurricane survival. The Coast Guard cutter drew alongside, initiating the dangerous process of evacuating the Horizon Seeker's crew and passengers. As specialized equipment was deployed to transfer people between the violently moving vessels, Jack tightened his grip on Emily's hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together. 3 months after the hurricane, Jack stood on the observation deck of the Miami Maritime Historical Museum, watching Emily explain mathematical principles of colonial Spanish navigation to a group of middle school students. She moved confidently among the displays featuring artifacts from the Santa Cruz and San Miguel. Her enthusiasm infectious as she described how historical navigators had solved complex problems with mathematical insight. And this cipher, she explained, pointing to an interactive display, wasn't just about keeping secrets. It was actually part of the mathematical system they used to determine longitude at sea, decades before official solutions were recognized. Jack smiled with pride. At 12 years old, Emily had become something of a minor celebrity in academic circles, following the events aboard the Horizon Seeker. The special educational program created for her at the museum combined her regular studies with specialized work in historical mathematics, all funded by a substantial grant that would carry her through college. "She's a natural teacher," Alexa observed, joining Jack at the railing. "The students adore her." "Never thought our lives would end up here," Jack admitted. 3 months ago, I was working 3 jobs just to keep us afloat." His phone vibrated. Another email from the Pentagon's Advanced Maritime Security Division. After their ordeal at sea, Jack's military background combined with his quick thinking during the crisis had caught the attention of government officials. The job offer they'd extended was beyond anything he could have imagined. Heading a specialized team focused on protecting historically significant maritime discoveries with national security implications. The salary was triple what he made at the museum, with benefits that would secure Emily's education through graduate school. "Any update on Crane's legal challenges?" he asked. "His attorneys are persistent, but the courts have consistently ruled that the navigational innovations represented in the San Miguel documents belong to the historical record, not to private interests," Alexa replied. "Ha! During the doctor, Harmon's documentation and Emily's photographs proved crucial in establishing the public interest case." The confrontation with Crane had continued long after the storm subsided. His attempts to claim exclusive intellectual property rights over the Spanish navigational innovations had triggered an international legal battle involving maritime salvage law, historical preservation statutes, and even the Spanish government. "I still can't believe Harmon had been tracking Crane's activities for years," Jack remarked. "Thomas always was more than just an academic historian," Alexa acknowledged. His work with international heritage protection organizations gave him a unique perspective on the commercial exploitation of historical innovations. Atlantic Exploration had undergone significant restructuring, with Crane's investment group bought out by a consortium of academic institutions. The artifacts recovered from both Spanish galleons were now centerpieces of the museum's collection, with the navigational innovations fully documented and available to researchers worldwide. "Dad!" "Alexa!" Emily called, having finished her presentation. She hurried over, her face flushed with excitement. Professor Blackwood called. "The analysis of the full navigation system is being published next month in the International Journal of Maritime History, with my name as co-author." "The youngest in the journal's history," Alexa noted. "Though I'm not surprised. Your mathematical insights were instrumental in understanding the system. It's strange to think that if you hadn't knocked on our door that night, none of this would have happened," Emily reflected. Alexa led them to a conservation lab where Dr. Martinez was examining a small silver medallion, roughly the size of a $50. Despite centuries underwater, the preservation was remarkable, with clearly visible engravings. "It's a presentation medal," she explained, "commissioned by the Spanish Royal Academy for the navigator of the San Miguel in recognition of his mathematical innovations." Emily examined the detailed engravings through a magnifying glass. On one side was a precisely rendered astrolabe surrounded by mathematical notations. On the reverse, an inscription in Spanish. "Knowledge illuminates the path when stars are hidden," Emily translated. "And there's a date, 1714. A year before the hurricane that sank the ships," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "This wasn't just a typical navigator doing his job. He was a recognized mathematical innovator, honored by the Royal Academy. Just like you, Jack said softly to Emily. While his current position as security director had provided stability, the Pentagon job would change everything. He'd already put a deposit on a beautiful house in a prestigious neighborhood with excellent schools, complete with a dedicated study for Emily and even a backyard pool. The financial worries that had dominated his existence for years were not just eased but eliminated. There's something else I wanted to discuss with you both, Alexis said as they walked through the museum's atrium. The museum is sponsoring a new educational expedition this summer, a research vessel following the entire route of the 1715 fleet. We'd like you to join us as a student instructor, Emily. And Jack, we could use your expertise as well. Another ship? Even after what happened last time, Emily asked. A much larger vessel, Alexa assured them, with state-of-the-art weather monitoring. And no hurricanes this time? We've scheduled well outside the season. What do you think, Dad? Emily asked, clearly hoping for his approval. I think, he said carefully, that some treasures are worth the journey, no matter how challenging the waters might be. He paused, then added, and I have some news of my own. The Pentagon has offered me a position heading their Advanced Maritime Security Division. We'll be protecting historically significant discoveries with national security implications. Emily's eyes widened. Dad, that's amazing. It is, he agreed. And the best part, you can continue your work here at the museum while I take on this new role. They're even providing a housing allowance that will let us buy that house we looked at last weekend. Just like the Spanish navigator who created the mathematical system, he must have thought the same thing, that taking risks can lead to incredible rewards. I suspect he did, Alexa agreed, and 3 centuries later, his work connected with the perfect mind to understand it. She smiled at Jack. The Pentagon's gain is our loss, but I'm thrilled for you both. You deserve this opportunity after everything you've been through. Thank you, Jack replied. And don't worry, my new position means I'll still be closely connected to your future expeditions, just with more resources behind me. As they stood together in the sunlight streaming through the museum's windows, Jack felt a profound sense of peace. The storm-tossed journey that had begun with a knock at their door had led them not just to Spanish treasure, but to something far more valuable. A future where Emily's brilliant mind could flourish, where his own talents were recognized at the highest levels, and where their relationship as father and daughter had grown stronger through shared adventure. Outside, the Atlantic stretched to the horizon, the same waters that had claimed the Spanish galleons, that had nearly taken the Horizon Seeker, that had carried centuries of explorers and innovators. Its depths still held countless secrets and treasures waiting to be discovered by those with the courage to venture beyond safe harbors. And for Jack and Emily Foster, whose lives had been transformed by one such journey into the unknown, the greatest adventure was just beginning.